tomorrow. City Muga. Okay. Uko sawa?
Married daddy.
Yeah?
Married daddy kabisa. Yes.
Umeamua ukae hapo?
Nimeamua kutii sheria. Nimeambiwa nikae hapa kwa sababu mgeni akija akae pale.
Mwenyeji apone.
Sasa mimi vile mimi ni mtu utii sheria. Si kuona ugumu wote. Nilihama, nikaja, nikaketi hapa. Sababu kiti hichi huwa naikuta hapa. Sitoki nayo nyumbani kwangu. So, mwenyekiti akikwambia songa, unasonga.
Haya, songa karibu.
There's a song like that.
Yes.
Songa karibu na mimi. Well done.
How are you?
I'm actually really very well.
Right.
This cold, though, is cold.
There's a different story today.
Well, actually, no. The body is fine, but I'm just commenting and saying it actually is really quite cold. The body is fine.
Indeed it is.
And how are you, Eric?
I'm very fine, thank you. Thank you very much for asking. I appreciate your concern. Ndu, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. You had a lovely day?
I did. Yes.
Okay. So, how body?
Body day inside Clotho Jerry. They go small.
Small.
It's amazing how when you listen to a language or a dialect and you approximate to what is closest to it. Like there's a word that you've just mentioned that which sounds like chariot.
Body day inside cloth.
See that one. Now, either chariot or cyclops.
Cloth.
I know what it means because you've explained it to me. I'm simply saying because I'm
Sounds
thinking
like chariot.
Well, you are. Well, I'm thinking of how pidgin is actually formed, or all these dialects. One, it has to do with the person hearing what is being said and approximating it to a language that they're accustomed to.
Sure. So if I ask you, what do you do as you come out from here yesterday? What do you go do?
See? Yes. When I came out from here, what did I go and do? See?
Yeah. So waiting has all those meanings.
Waiting is what, essentially, what is. Come out. It's two words split and then put together, come out.
Eric, there is a name that is given to tea without sugar. In the language you call your mother tongue, Duviao. Do you know where it comes from?
Tea is what?
Tea without sugar. Dubia.
Ndubia.
Yes.
Where does it come from?
Well, that is homework for today, and those who are listening
Thank you, Mwalimu.
and who understand will be able to tell us what they think, because there are words that may not necessarily originate from what we call our mother tongue, but it's an influence of languages that we learn as we get older.
Dubia.
Or as we interact.
So what's tea with sugar?
Tea.
Well, is that not the question?
That's so interesting. That there's a whole word for tea without sugar.
Yes.
There's a different
And
word for
tea without milk.
Right, okay.
For instance, let me give you a hint. Tea without milk, black tea, is often called strong tea. But in Kiswahili, call it strungi. Do you see where the strong comes in to influence?
Oui, j'ai vu, monsieur.
Umejevu. Sawa basi.
See, I get the influence. Here you are saying jevu, and I'm thinking devu.
You're thinking devil.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we're going to have a couple of conversations majoring on debt. So where are we in terms of our public debt? We have heard that there's a move to go and apply for the raising of the debt ceiling yet again. But do we know how much we owe? Do we know who we owe? Do you know what the conditions for that, for the debt are? So all those conversations we'll be having with our guest host today, Wanjiru Gekonyo of TISA. She'll be back today in the studio, and we'll be having a conversation with that, about that. And then we also have a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning, Ukur Yatani. The man has served 1 year in office. 1 year where there was drop in revenue, as he calls it. There was, some serious economic hardship. So we want to understand how his 1 year in office has been. And it's also the same time when we've just been asking everybody whom we owe, just give us a break, okay?
Right.
So the group of 20, the Paris Club have given us a break. The Chinese have also indicated that they are willing to give us a break in debt repayment. Now the commercial lenders, those ones don't give a hoot, so they cannot give us a break.
In due course, they will consider, because a default situation may not necessarily be favorable. It may appear so. But even if we had used our port as collateral, what? They're going to pluck it and take it wherever it is that we borrowed the money from. No.
They just continue
Usually
penalizing
people
you.
want to see what others are doing first. Because remember, there had been a discussion that the Chinese were not very willing to give us that break. But now they are willing. But we were unwilling to look for the break. We were unwilling to actually ask for it in the first place.
You were fearing.
But think also when you're talking about debts, you see, when you talk about domestic borrowing, you think about banks, isn't it?
Yep.
But there's another source of borrowing that isn't often mentioned, that is pension funds. Because pension funds, by their very nature, are long-term funding.
Yep.
It's not as though someone contributes and wants the money tomorrow. Now, the ceiling that we have as a country with regards to borrowing from that particular sector is close to $1 trillion. 1T R. Okay?
Yep.
Now, if the government is unable to meet its obligation to other lenders, don't you then think that it would be perhaps wise to speculate that they may not be able to meet the demands of paying the interest that is due to these particular institutions? And what that means is those who have pensions and have been waiting to be paid may, not will, may have a problem.
Have you ever gotten to a point where you had a country not being able to meet its commercial paper, bond, and
Greece got there.
Well,
Greece got there very...
Greece was just baskets.
Yes.
Okay. So, but if, for example, let's look at the case of Zambia. Okay, it's gotten to a point where, well, they haven't defaulted according to their finance minister. Just uses a couple of other words.
They're just late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Comfortable terminology.
Yes. But it hasn't come to that when it comes to government paper.
You see, the thing about government paper is this. So long as the government is functioning, they will always be collecting money. Meaning, if they have someone who's a good juggler, they will know how to juggle this and sort this out while doing this, while doing the other. They'll be able to do that. Because after all, if the government wants to borrow money from you, remember, government paper is considered one of the safest forms of investment. Because the only time it ceases to make sense is if that government collapses completely. And that usually is a rarity. It's in, and when it does, then everything else in that country has gone.
It's squisher.
Yes.
It's all up in the air.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have those conversations. We'll be having a conversation with Onjiro Gikonyo. We'll have a conversation with Ukuriatani. And then also we'll have a conversation on personal debt. Yeah, so people have borrowed, people have been unable to pay. Auctioneers have been sent on them. We'll be speaking to some of those auctioneers this morning and let them tell us.
Hasn't there been a twist in this saga, Eric, where auctioneers do their thing and then there's nobody to actually sell those things or to buy?
So they just keep them there.
Yep.
So they'll tell us what they're doing. So now the auctioneer is paying for storage and demurrage, which of course will be passed on to you. So they took this particular piece of item, this particular item, because of a debt of 10,000 shillings.
Usually the value of the item they take will be more than that 10,000.
Within a 6 months' time, you owe them 15,000. Why? Storage. Boss. Anyway, let's start with COVID.
Okay. So crazy numbers coming out of the United Kingdom. Let's start by looking at that. The UK has now gone into lockdown yet again. And this is for Great Britain, Wales, and Northern Ireland. This is what's going on right now. The numbers that were found yesterday, 33,355 new cases around the United Kingdom and 1,610 new deaths in the United Kingdom yesterday. Like we said, back on lockdown, schools had opened, but those have closed again because of what's going on right now. Boris Johnson is appealing and says the situation is very, very tough. And he said with the NHS, there's a strain on staff, and the strain actually is quite colossal. He's appealing to the public to follow lockdown rules, and they require people in England to stay home and only go out for limited reasons, such as for food, shopping, exercise, or work, if they cannot do so from home. So these measures are in place across much of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. They're saying it's distressing because the second wave of COVID has more deaths than the first wave, right? 1,564 people have died in the UK within 28 days of a positive COVID test. So from the time they were found to be positive, it has taken 28 days for them to meet their death, and this has happened to 1,564 people. So this is quite the thing that they're suffering with right now. Excuse me. People are now dying and are likely to have been infected 3 or so weeks, and this was around Christmas time, just a week after Christmas or so. And of that number, this is actually quite alarming. In Wales, for example, 564 people in one day, and after that happened, everything was shut down. Everybody went into lockdown. Schools were closed, and work from home.
564 people died
in a day.
In a day.
In Wales alone. In Wales alone. And so now when they're looking at numbers across the kingdom, and by the time they collate all of this, it called for them to say, look, we're going to have to look at this one properly. Understand also, this is the same kingdom in which another strain of COVID has been found. And this is where infections are happening and then symptoms are coming on much quicker than they did with the first strain. NHS under strain, and they're not going to show what they're going to be able to do if they are not able to keep people at home. So this is a big deal.
That is something. Wow.
It is.
And they're still going on with the vaccination campaign.
Still going on vaccinations.
Okay.
But again, I mean, as would hopefully make sense to everybody, those who are ill are not being vaccinated. Okay? The United States also continues to suffer from these big problems. One of the big things that Biden is expected to do within days after being sworn in is to now establish the work of the COVID committee. He has to get reports in terms of what has been happening. And, you know, from the news that we saw yesterday, he might be in for a rude shock in terms of what the government before him actually did to curb COVID beyond the press conferences that we get every day. But he has to hit the ground running with this one, because they're now at 24,806,964. If we look at the numbers around the US, even with talks of inauguration coming and such, they're still dealing with this high numbers. Yesterday having been recorded in the United States of 171,525, considerably lower than what they've been recording over the last 14 days. However, still up there and something that they have to grapple with. They're just around 15 million in terms of vaccinations around the US now, and they're hoping to have gone further than that in the next couple of weeks.
Wow, okay.
So let's see.
We'll be taking a break shortly. Let's first welcome our guest host for today, Wanjiro Gekonyo of the Institute for Social Accountability. Happy New Year, Wanjiro.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you.
Pleasure to be here. Hey. Apologies I'm late.
Welcome, Wanjiro.
Mwili haujazoea. Hii mambo ya New Year. Bado tuko hapo.
You're still in 2020.
Still 2020. Waiting for the Zoom link to upload.
Welcome.
Asante.
Don't worry. Be happy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Deep thoughts from Reverend Eric. Since you were last here, he's been ordained.
Oh, right.
Yes.
He's doing well.
He is doing brilliantly.
That's a perfect start to the day.
What we haven't been told yet is the denomination or church that the good man of the cloth is actually affiliated to. But I'm sure we'll know that in due course.
Eric, they're always detractors.
Multi-denominational.
And I can hear the inclination.
Someone wants to say,
you should be supporting.
Because you're not like me, then I will not listen. Come on, I'm multi-denominational.
I actually support Eric fully.
Very good.
When someone has a clear inclination
pass the bag around
on infinity, like Eric does,
yes,
every once in a while bring us back to the good word,
yes,
with apt and appropriate quotation.
Right.
From real verses.
Real verses in the Bible. Not the Bible according to Saint Samson.
Eric.
Yes. No. He's a man. Yes, Samson. The book of Samson.
Saint Samson.
Yes. I support him fully.
Okay, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Wanjiru.
Thank you.
Looking forward to interesting conversations. Also, welcome to the show, everybody. Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. We are live streaming, and the live stream is up. Say hello. We'll be saying hello to you after we take this break and take a look at the weather. Good morning.
Gender-based violence is an issue many perceive to be embarrassing to talk about. Some traditions and cultures consider it a taboo for those being violated to speak openly about it. Most opt for alternative solutions, which in most cases fail to bear fruit, meaning they continue to suffer silently. Although this vice aims at humiliating women, most of them emerge as heroes who come out to speak about this issue as well as advocating for human rights. Coronavirus pandemic has also attracted severe measures from the government which may strengthen laws and policies against this vice. This Wednesday, on a special episode of Kiocha Hoja, we focus on the increasing cases of gender-based violence, especially during the corona pandemic period, their causes and possible solutions.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, we're waiting for the sun to come out in Nairobi this morning.
The
Cloudy
weather
conditions at
with
15.
Spice
We'll go to
F-
highs of 27 today. We're looking at lows of 14. Nyeri is partly cloudy at 12. Highs of 25 and lows of 11. 12 will be the low in Nakuru today. 15 degrees and mostly cloudy at the moment, going to highs of 28. 26 will be the high in Eldoret. 14 degrees and mostly cloudy at the moment. It'll come down to 18 degrees in Kisumu today. It's mostly cloudy at 19 and it will rise to a high of 27. 30 will be the high in Kakamega, mostly cloudy now this morning at 15. We're looking at highs of 34 in Mombasa. Clear conditions for the moment, 23 degrees. It's also 23 and mostly clear in Malindi, going to highs of 32 and lows of 25. Stepping out of Kenya into Kampala, 21 degrees, cloudy conditions, highs of 25 today and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is mostly clear at 27. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 26. We're looking at highs of 28 in Johannesburg today, getting a bit warm today. Clear skies currently at 16 degrees. Lagos reading 27 already this morning and partly cloudy, highs of 33 and lows of 23. Looking at clear conditions in Kinshasa for now, 32 the high and lows of 24. Let's go on east and look into Beijing, where it's a little bit warmer today at -3. It'll go to lows of -8 and highs of just above 0 at 2. Rain showers in Paris at 7 degrees will take us to temperatures of 12, coming back down to lows of 7. It's cloudy in London and 100% chance of rain today, 11 and 11. Wouldn't get much colder than this or higher than this, warmer. Clear conditions in New York. As everybody wakes up in the US today, they'll wake up to highs of 6 and come back to lows of 0.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room this morning. Wherever you are, where is everybody?
Okay, well, Shirage is on the train this morning and he says tea with lots of sugar in our language is called ngogoyo. CT. Now you know what it is. I don't know what language that is.
Okay, so Shirage, what is the origin of the word nduvia? That is the question. This man is answering his own question. Setting his own exam and answering it.
It's a platform that I think many people use. And there are people who actually make it an art form where they're asked one thing and they said, well, you know, that question is really very good, but what I would have considered, your question is gone. You're listening.
The question perhaps should be.
Abbas.
Okay. Yeah, that is not the question. Perhaps is not the issue. Okay, anyway.
So Alex Mbogo is tuned in from Nyeri this morning, and Charity Minor tuned in from Nakuru. Titus Ombeta is in Kisi this morning, and he says tea without sugar in Kisi is called ndubi. Harold Ayodo is following from South Sea while sipping his hot black coffee called ndufia. To battle the Nairobi cold this morning, Waterman Jeffrey is tuned in from Minneapolis, and Evans Otieno is tuned in listening from Kisumu. Beijing is already in the room, according to Master Dan, and Kapte is tuned in from Koryot in Nandi. Good morning, guys. Isaiah Caboro tuned in from Minneapolis as well. And Robert is in Mombasa. Beta Ashley tuned in from Machakos this morning. And Solo says, I'm back, guys. I've missed you. You guys good? Are you good?
Yes.
You're good?
Yeah.
Good.
Are you?
Yes. Moses Gashari is tuned in this day. And he says, Juja Tupo Tupo. Today we celebrate President Joe Biden, the 46th of the USA. Good morning, everybody.
All right. Good morning and welcome, everybody. So, City, today's proverb.
Yes, indeed, today's proverb. This is a short and to the point proverb. Men would tell... No, let me start again. Men would not tell lies if women asked fewer...
... City is out to provoke this morning. City, I haven't seen you since last year. And then you start. So men tell lies because of women.
Okay, now, I want to
So,
I want you
now.
to observe what has just happened here. This is a proverb that I prepared over the weekend and timed it for today. But when you has personalized it,
Yes.
it's like, I'm here today and you say this.
Imagine.
You people don't want to finish the proverb, Baby. What?
Yes, incomplete proverb.
Actually,
That's
it isn't incomplete.
You have not finished it now.
That's the end of the proverb.
That's exactly how it is.
That is it.
Yes, that is how it is. So,
Men
it's
would not
not
tell
that
lies
I
if
haven't
women-
edited it or added my likes.
Yes.
No.
So the
That
proverb again. Men
Men would not tell lies if women asked fewer. Ends there. ...
Okay.
Can men take responsibility for their lie making
Wait,
in the
Wanjiro,
first
This
instance?
proverb 2.0.
Honestly. I'm wondering, where have I been? Is this where?
Things have gotten to in the absence.
This is terrible.
No, actually,
this one is only focusing on the lies from men. It doesn't mean that women do not lie.
No, but
At no point has the proverb indicated. Also, we do not know what questions or what that ... implies.
Oh, is there a ...
Men would not tell lies if women
But you see, there's an
are
association.
fewer.
The if implies that men tell lies because
Because-
of something to do with women. So that is...
actually, Wanjiro, you do have a point, and certainly that is one way of looking at it.
Just say what's on your mind, CT, instead of hiding behind the proverb.
However, what this proverb pointed to me, and we'll talk about the nuances later, is how it is we can encapsulate a certain relational platform that human beings have with each other with just a few words. That's what occurred to me. Yes. But I would argue it's not as though men tell what we call lies. You see, now,
Okay, here we go.
what men do, they give you an alternate perspective.
To the truth.
The other
I
side.
like that.
The truth.
The other side of the story.
Yes.
Okay.
Language is dynamic and it is continuing to be, it's evolving in very interesting ways this morning.
Yes, yes.
So let's take a look at the headlines then in the papers. Hey, here's a good one. On page 10 of the Standard, let's just set the stage for what we'll be discussing later on. Uhuru's new debt plan as China offers a breather. The president to prioritize PPPs in pushing big infrastructure projects, even as China gives Kenya 6-month repayment holiday ahead of the deadline to pay 55 billion shillings on Thursday for the SGR loan. This is on page 10, and it's also covered in The Nation as well. So, Kenya is receiving this 55 billion shillings reprieve because China has told us, all right, you have until the end of this financial year. Then we can start this story again in the next financial year. So we already have seen what has happened with the Paris Club, 32.9 billion shillings of what could have paid. We've been given that reprieve.
Similar
And
arrangement.
debt service suspension initiative, similar arrangement with the Chinese, who have indicated that they are willing to have this conversation. In fact, their statement from the Chinese was that all the countries that have applied, the Exim Bank of China and the other government agencies have basically considered the applications that they've received so far. So this is the Exim Bank and the China International Development Cooperation Agency. They have implemented all eligible debt suspension requests of the developing nations. And they say, we stand ready to strengthen coordination with Kenya and assist Kenya in its efforts to address debt challenges. Both sides are now keeping efficient communication through smooth channel.
Okay.
That falls into the category of an old story. The real story is whether our parliament is actually going to raise our debt ceiling yet again. And then the all-important question, what do we really plan to do with this money this time?
Yeah, now that the kind of money that we don't pay.
Yeah, we've been borrowing. Now, okay, we want to borrow again. What do we want to do with this money, really? And we have a right to ask because we're the ones who end up paying for it anyway. So if I'm going to be paying for this thing, it's not really too much to ask. Can you please inform me what it is you want to do with this thing that you want me to pay for later? And what guarantees you put in place to ensure that you actually do the things you say you're going to do?
Well, at the same time, so the other part of that headline was Uhuru's plans to do this. So Uhuru has set up the Public-Private Partnership Department, and he has tapped somebody from the Standard Chartered Bank, who was the Director of Regional Sustainable Finance, Africa and Middle East. His name is Christopher Kirigwa. He will be the Director General of this newly created Department of Public-Private Partnerships. The deliberations, the Standard has established that the appointment followed a series of meetings held at State House. The deliberations were based on strengthening of the PPPs, which is an important aspect in the economic recovery post-COVID-19. The Director General is an investment expert for private sector. So this is what the government is trying to do, just to see how we can work better with the private sector.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the Standard puts these stories together because government, if you look at the DSSI, the Paris Club, the argument there was that the government is seeking a reprieve to enable it respond to COVID priorities. And particularly it was health and cushioning those who are economically impacted by the COVID. Now, with China, of course, there's no associated statement, but on the same day, you then have this movement on the PPP, implying that it's about more big infrastructure. Big infrastructure is what drove us into debt. And the COVID recovery strategy of government is to spend on health and social investments, not more big infrastructure. So the question you ask, CT, is right on. Where is the money going? And how can we be sure that these conflicting statements are not masking the intention to do business as usual, get a reprieve to complete the big four infrastructure projects?
What really concerns me is 2022 and the history that we have with political players building war chests for, and I'm calling them war chests for the elections, all right? And big infrastructural projects normally presents an opportunity for cash finding its way where it shouldn't be going in the first place. So when I hear that we want to borrow a couple more trillion shillings, I am worried because we have an election not too far away, and those who are in authority have not shown any sign of changing their behavior in any way or their thinking, because they still seek to solve problems by talking at us. But anything that meets us even halfway, trying to see us as equal partners where they can talk truth to us and tell us exactly what's going on, that is something they don't do. There's a complete deficit there. So the borrowing bit, I am concerned about. Everything else, as I said, takes second place.
To borrow, I think we were always going to have to borrow. And the debt ceiling was inevitably going to go up. Because the government has reconfigured how it reports debt. And so there are debts it wasn't capturing that it now has to capture, the debts owned by parastatals and so forth. So the moment it does that, then the debt figures go up. So part of the ceiling is to accommodate that and then also to borrow for the COVID response because it's not collecting enough money. So I agree with you. It's a concern that we are borrowing, but the bigger question is borrowing for what? Because I think with COVID impacts, all countries to some extent are borrowing. But has government accepted that the economy is on its knees because of big infrastructure? Or is it continuing to make the same mistakes it made starting back in 2013?
Therein is the conundrum, because we seem to be seeking to find out whether those in authority, those whom we call government, have the capacity to do what you're suggesting. Do they really have the capacity? Forget the will. We keep talking about the will. The capacity to actually deal with these issues as they should. Remember, we are often creatures of habit. If you're accustomed to talking at a problem and you're faced with a situation where you actually now have to do something, it really poses a serious problem for you.
Sure, absolutely. Fish out of water situation, because you're not really sure then how to handle it. If before the approach has been, let's see how we can dance around this issue, just talk. But now it requires that there is action. It would be quite difficult.
I think when you say government, the word that struck me is which government? Back to the theory. I'm still with the theory. I hoped in 2021 I'd have a new theory of state capture. When you're talking about government, which government? Because if you look at government policy statements, they are fine. When you look at the capacities within government, the competence is there. But which government is the one calling the shots?
You see, when you talk about competencies, we're talking about the people who are in authority and position to either create policies or to chart way forward. That has never been in doubt. We export that expertise. We have it in abundance. That's not what I'm talking about. The expertise of ensuring it gets done. Now, that's when the story of government, as you call it, comes in. Okay, it isn't even the will. The will that seems to be there is to continue with the status quo. That seems to be the will. You get money, take it wherever, with the exception of taking it where it should go. That seems to be the norm. So when you talk about state capture, yes, it captures what I am saying. But you see, this state capture has become, should we say, a national culture, because you find it's at the national level, it's at the county level. In fact, it's almost at every level. So long as there's an opportunity for Kenyans to do something that they ought not to do, they will do it.
Let me help you, Siti, then. We are talking about budgeted corruption, where projects are put in the budget for the express purpose of siphoning off money that goes back into elections.
Yes.
Those are the interests that are driving the day. And without transparency, without public participation, we've been unable to unmask and hold these shadowy figures to account, and they're able to continue asking for relief at the same time talking about mega infrastructure projects. I mean, that is an absurdity. It's a total anomaly.
You just can't put the two together. 26 minutes to 7. Let's take a break and take a look at traffic. See what's happening on the roads this early morning, and then look at other headlines. Good morning.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, traffic reports coming in this morning. We're looking at slow movement on Mombasa Road, right between the SGR and Cabanas as usual. So let's see how that opens up in a couple of minutes as we get into traffic hour officially. Unfortunately, there was an accident on Thika Road this morning at NYS involving two public service vehicles. Then moving outward shouldn't be too bad as you approach the Pangani Tunnel thereafter. All right, let's look right around Kiambu Road. That's starting to build up already, then trying to join the highway. Service lanes are looking actually pretty good this morning, as is the main highway. Shouldn't be any problems there. Okay, bypasses, southern and eastern, looking pretty good, as well as Red Hill bypass coming out of Westlands. Those are options for you to get to the CBD much quicker. All right, we'll take a look in about half hour, see how things have changed. Let us know if we need to let people know about what you see in your neck of the woods. It's flowing smoothly, or if there's a hold up, and let people know what to avoid this morning. All right, how can you talk to us? Do that on Twitter, SpiceFMKE, or text 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right,
Mornings.
lines.
Okay. On the Nation today, why counties won't get Uhuru's 50 billion shillings. No new money for governors as the CRA moves to rebudget funds already in devolved units. Counties should not expect any new money even after the National Cake Allocator proposed they receive 370 billion shillings in equitable share for the next financial year. In its proposal, the Commission on Revenue Allocation has renamed kitties that devolved units have been receiving all along as it struggled to deliver on President Kenyatta's pledge to give the 47 regional outfits over 50 billion shillings more. He had last year promised to allocate an additional 53 billion to counties in the 2021-2022 financial year as part of the deal to end the stalemate that gripped the nation during the debate on the third basis of revenue sharing formula. However, the proposal the Commission published yesterday show no new money will be allocated to counties, and the budget that had been achieved through the rebudgeting of the funds that had been given to the counties for the last 7 years of devolution. So it's likely to cause a ruckus in the Senate when it returns from recess, with some lawmakers already threatening to shoot down the proposal from the CRA. They've received a total of 39.8 billion from the national government this financial year. This comprised 316 billion in equitable share and 13.7 national government grants and 9.4 road maintenance levy. So it looks like no more money is going to the counties. They're not going to be very happy about this, and we're likely to see a heated debate about how this will pan out. But at the end of the day, no more money. And there are already problems, eh?
By more money, basically, the counties were expecting that they were going to get this full amount of 339 plus an extra 50.
Because this is what they were told.
No, they were told about 316 plus an extra 50. The thing is, look at the detail. The conversation was around 316 plus an extra 50, okay? So if the CRA looks at state of affairs and then says, okay, so how do we meet what has been agreed and what has been put into law on paper with the reality on the ground? So they've just basically, what they've done is they've renamed some of these monies and called it more allocation. According to the CRA chairperson, Jane Kiringai, she says, we have no new money to allocate to counties. We had to innovate because getting the addition of 50 billion to share was a problem in the circumstances. So what have they done? They have basically just looked at some of these extras. So the 316 was the equitable share plus the 13.7 conditional grants. So they've stopped calling it conditional grants and put it as part of equitable share. So that's been clever, isn't it? It's a bit complicated, when you think about. So, what are you talking about? So it's not going to be extra. So this conditional grant goes into equitable share. What impact does that have? Does it mean that you're actually receiving more money? Are you receiving less money? Are you receiving money?
Remember what I mentioned earlier on about solving problems with words? This is it. Say it plainly.
You're not getting any more money.
Finished.
Period.
We've understood. Yes.
But this desire to hoodwink people or to the country essentially and saying, well, you know what, actually, the money that we thought we would be able to bring, what we decided is put it here because it would make more sense. No, there is none. We cannot. Let's work with what we have. And I think that's the problem.
And then
not being able to work with what we have.
Remember, we have 34 billion lying
more.
idle at the central bank.
No, it's not idle.
Precisely. Why is it being presented as though there's money in the government system idle?
It can't be idle. It has been committed. It hasn't just been paid
out. Its purpose is known.
Yeah.
Yes. So is this us, the media, giving it labels and titles and creating a little drama out of
it was
something?
impression being given by the National Treasury that there's some money that they have not drawn from. In fact, that was a statement. Yes, we have fallen short. We are about 2 months behind in terms of releasing money to the counties.
However,
but I just went and checked the account. There's money in the account. Why aren't they using that money?
Games.
And
which has not been transferred, so cannot be used.
Yes. So there's all these questions. I look at it from the point where the Commission on Revenue Allocation has looked at, okay, you politicians went and sat down and did some things. So we are the ones to come and find how then this money goes in. And they've done what they've done with their expertise.
They've done their job.
You guys want to see this figure. Okay, so this is how we're going to put the figure. In reality, we cannot say that there is more money coming in, and yet this more money has...
It was just a rearrangement
source.
of what is there
Yes.
and given a different name. That's what has happened here.
So in the end, it's just political games by politicians.
Well, the funny thing here is that one, CRA is not a political body.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be giving recommendations that are grounded constitutionally and in economic, sense. And then it's interesting to remove those conditions because some of those conditions are tied with the sources of the funds. So for those conditions to be removed, it means that the funders have to agree, okay, this money will go into the equitable share for counties to use as they will, because counties then most likely will spend that on recurrent expenditure. And part of the reason, there are conditions is to make sure that money goes into health, goes into water, goes into service delivery. So at the end of the day, this is a deal in which Wanjiko will lose. This is a deal in which counties that are less scrupulous will misallocate that money very easily. And the most significant is that counties are then not getting the amount of money they need because we're still doing large infrastructure. Yeah. So really the political deal, it was like a magic show. It was abracadabra. Let us make the problem go away. We buy 6 months.
It was dangled in order for folks to make a decision and agree on a formula and let's move ahead.
And I remember the conversation at the time was, let us pass the BBI so that this money can come
out.
Here
so that we can allocate.
There is no money.
We have the allocation.
We have to keep going back to the reality that our money is tied up in large infrastructure, and the competition is large infrastructure versus devolution. And the interesting thing is, how will you fight COVID without spending more on counties? It's not possible because health is a county function. So if you're not increasing money to health, how are you then fighting COVID? How are you then building resilience or financing agriculture? Because food security has come out as a very important thing. Small businesses, informal sector, a lot of those are plying their trade in the counties. So it doesn't add up. It's more of the same, and I think, like you say, it's political mastery, puppeteering, and magic tricks.
Yeah. Magic show?
Magic show.
This is it. Okay. Another headline. City, what are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at a story here in the Daily Nation. It is written by...
You moved the mic away and you needed to come closer to it.
You know this mic thing.
I need it in here, City.
Am I being heard clearly now?
Yes,
okay.
Better.
The things that try my life on this planet. Anyway, the article I'm reading is on page 12 by Dr. Wenwa Akinyi Odinga. The title is Jaramogi's Rich Legacy for Kenya's Democracy. What this reminds me of, and the key to this entire article is Jaramogi's popularity and what it was based on. He seemed to have been able to communicate directly to the common man and to also address the aspirations of the common man. It's something that clearly his son Raila has inherited. But of interest, if you want to talk about political leaders who have made sense to their people and whose popularity has grown, you see, you then leave the politician aside and ask yourself, what are the aspirations of these people? Because the aspirations also explain the disenchantment that the population will have with their leader. If the person isn't talking that particular language, or if they have an aspiration that may not necessarily be a feasible one, or may not necessarily be productive, but it's what they have, even if it's something that appears to be destructive, if that person speaks their language, that person will appeal. Remember, for the longest time, one of the things that we've had in this country is what we call opposition politics. And anyone who has appeared to be in the opposition always gained traction. Because for some reason, there's a love-hate relationship that we've always had with any government. And I mean any government that has been in place. The time when, in my mind, it toned down considerably was during the Kibaki era. It toned down. There were more yeses than there were nays. But the Uhuru Ruto government, those ones have brought it to a whole new level, completely new level. Communicating to the people what it is that you feel the aspiration is and them resonating with you.
And then now I think the challenge, the gap is left in all that communication translating into some action, to actual benefits. So people will come and they'll speak the language of the people, and then they go back there and they sit in that locked room and they say, I've told them. I've told them now, they're okay, now let's move on with what we wanted to do. Or you go back to that table because they've actually given you a seat at that table, and you go and negotiate on their behalf. So that they actually get the benefits. When you're coming to say, we are going to do ABCD, let's look at the language of the politicians. Tutajenga barabara, tutajenga hospitali, same language since you were young, even now when our children are young. Okay?
Now when
same
I'm
language.
clearly not young.
Yes. Tutajenga barabara, tutajenga hospitali, mashule hapa, and that new found word, vijana wapate nafasi za ajira. Same language. Now, how does that or populism translate into actual delivery of all those promises?
There's something.
Is there a leader who has actually spoken and delivered?
You know what I find interesting, depending on how far back I go into history, there are empowerment developments or programs that certain leaders have brought into being. Jaramogi began something called Luo Thrift. He wasn't alone. There were very many people who joined him in that thinking. But it was a move to build a platform for economic empowerment. Really good thinking, clear thinking. Then there was Gema. In my mind, clear thinking. You could see what they were thinking and what could be done. But then you also see what it is that every sitting government has tried to do with such organizations. Because if it seems like it's going to bring or empower a certain group of people, then the language of competition comes in and it's actually presented as being negative. So anything that could possibly be done to derail it is done. And usually the government succeeds and it gets derailed. So what am I saying? I'm saying that a lot of what you've just been saying also points to the limitation of the leaders who present themselves in such a light. Because the culture seems to be to say things that you have no intentions of doing. But to say them all the same.
To resonate. You have the pulse of the people.
Yes,
it's politics. Politics is really about power. And the question is, who is benefiting from the power? So if you can benefit a few, then use propaganda by all means. And I think the big question here is, you look at what happened in Uganda, where you have straight out authoritarian dictatorship. And there the lines are very, very clear.
No democracy in that statement, my dear?
You look at when you look at the situation in Uganda, the lines
country.
The lines there are very clear. But you come to Kenya, which is democratic, and yet we are having all these, like what you're talking about. Our democracy is not delivering for the people. So democracy, I think, is under test. And I liked something I read in the paper yesterday where one of the commentators was saying, despite democracy being on a back foot and appearing not to deliver, it's important that we continue to exercise it. And I'd like to say we need to encourage ourselves. We are being fed a lot of propaganda. We are not happy, and we can see these lies, and every so often people vote irrationally because of the lies. But if you look at what happened in America, where you had grassroots organization being able to flip an election, there is hope. And I think the lesson for us is we have to do the work. And I think as civil society, as Kenyans, we have to recognize that we have to do the work of building grassroots. We can't deal with the interests around politics.
But how do you deal with the clear need, as I see it, by people to have a leader whom they can listen to? Because the leaderships that we see, whether we like them or not, clearly they meet the need that certain people have. Now, when you have that, how do you then present a narrative, how then do you present a situation that will enable them to actually think differently?
You've said it right, very well. The leaders speak a language that resonates with the people. Donald Trump resonated with the people, despite his despicable, in fact, half of Americans go for him. But despite his rhetoric, grassroots organization was able to flip core Republican states. So if we bring that example in Kenya and say, how do we cut through this rhetoric
It's really
and propaganda?
Fight voter apathy.
It's apathy. It's also voters being put into these ethnic cabals, or
You see why? I mentioned apathy. Ask yourself, for instance, if you look at any election, let's go back to what percentage of the voting population actually vote?
No, but when they do vote, who do they vote in?
Yes, but I'm saying what you're saying is actually true. But you'll find it goes hand in hand with the number of people who actually vote increasing. That's really the point I'm making.
I think we have a bad electoral system with poor choices, and we are making decisions in that setting where you say this thing doesn't work. So where will I gain the most? So we are So the question is, how do we get out of this?
The choices aren't poor.
Are they not?
No, not really. If you look at the people who are elected, people who elect them for very good reasons, because there is a before. And that before usually is very, very attractive. These people make an effort to at least have a track record of showing that they mean and they intend. So they are voted for on that basis that this person has shown signs that they can do things. Then they are elected. And then lo and behold, a metamorphosis takes place.
There was no metamorphosis in Nairobi when the governor that has just left got to office. A self-declared, I think Sonko had talked about his escapades with the law, his time in jail. He had given all that. He had made it very clear he doesn't work within the system.
Yeah, but that gangster,
yet he appealed. He's a gangster.
That gangster narrative is appealing.
Exactly.
Because of what he was able to do for people, and they resonated with that, okay, here is somebody who is going to take care of my need as I have it now. I have a problem. Here is somebody who would actually reach out beyond all this cover of government and the bureaucracy that surrounds it, and was able to meet a need as you feel it now. And you make a decision based on how that need was met, which is what happens in most cases. I have a need, it's met. I am going to then side with this individual who has met my need, because the options I had previously, they didn't meet my need as I had it personally. Yeah. And that's why we saw the decision, truth be told, that's why we saw the decision in huge numbers that we saw for the Nairobi governor. That's what happened.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we undo that? Because that's the reality we are dealing with. So in Nairobi, it's the governor. At the national level, then you have a party, the Jubilee Party, which didn't really have the track record, but was able to sell things, sell itself as coming to deliver all kinds of things, and then run the country to the ground. And win, maybe not win a second election, but
be in government again.
Be in government again. How do we undo this? We have to recognize that our system, we passed the constitution, we have the laws. We are well-intended, we want good things, but our system isn't working. And we need to change. We can't keep saying, our leaders lied to us. Because, yes, they lied to us. In fact, now they pay expensive PR companies to lie to us properly so that we are happy as we're being lied to.
Do you think we really want change?
Of course we do.
I keep saying this thing, and I'm yet to be convinced otherwise. The time that you will see people making this decision, this one that you're talking about, asking yourself what's going to get us to that place where the wheels begin to turn. The only time that you will see that is when that desire becomes so strong that people are willing to do whatever it takes to bring out certain change. And I don't think people have reached there yet. I don't think enough people, because that's what you need. It can't be 2-3 people in one space, another 10 somewhere here. The time that people in such large numbers are going to have reached the point where they say enough is enough and we've hit the wall. That is the time that you'll see the kind of turnaround. The example of grassroots elections that you're talking about. Stacey Abrams was not talking to a bunch of people who were just like, oh, okay. She was talking to a bunch of people that said, hold on a minute, we're tired of seeing lives being taken away by an administration who really doesn't care about the race divide. We're tired of seeing poor healthcare. She was talking to a group of people over and over again. The bubbles began to join. Until you have people who have gotten to the point where the desire for change is so strong or their fed-upness has reached the maximum, until you get there, this change that we are looking at is not going to come about.
But having said that, in Makueni, Kibudha Kibwana used grassroots organizing to get into power, to fight the county assembly efforts to impeach him and get the county suspended.
Why?
So grassroots organizing has also been used in this country, and it works. And the problem is we don't do it enough.
I think it's about bringing more and more people to see the same problem, to understand, to redefine. People want change, but change to what? When people were voting in the 90s, they wanted change.
Moi must go.
From one to what? Yes, it was just remove Moi. To what? It wasn't clear. At the point when people will actually be clear, so we want to see this and the other clearly defined happen in Nairobi, then you'll see campaigns for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat changing, and the conversations changing, and the candidates also who come out being vetted differently. But now we are talking about, so this person, I feel this person speaks my language, or I feel this person is a fighter, or I feel this person. But you haven't really defined your own need. You're going by their own definition of their own self.
You're actually allowing them to
You
define
don't know
this
what you
thing
want.
for you.
Yeah.
So you're saying you don't know what you want.
It's not clear in your mind exactly what you want.
You actually want this person to tell you.
You want this person to tell you what you're not actually sure. Okay, is this who I want? Is this who I would make a decision for?
Yep.
And then you get stuck on.
You see,
on that.
you talked about people not being angry enough or upset enough. I think, in a sense, they are. If you look at, there's this assumption that when people get upset, they will use constructive means. I think people also use destructive means. And if you look at the youth, and I look especially at youth, if you look at the banking financial sector, there's a lot of internal fraud by young, intelligent, well-educated people. So there's already levels of disruption happening where young people feel, you've trained me, educated me, you've given me this job that, is not taking me anywhere. There are disruptions happening. I think there are disruptions, and maybe we need to start listening to those narratives and look at what are youth doing in the spaces they are. Because the disruption may not come as we are tired with the electoral system. I think it might be very destructive.
It'll be something completely different. So keep it right here for more conversations happening. In the next hour, we will be talking about debt issue. So where are we? Wanjiru Gikonyo is our guest host for today. She's here because she has been here before. But Wanjiru, when it comes to debt, you and several other organizations have come together and something called Okoa Uchumi, and you've been having these conversations with various stakeholders, trying to bring the people to understand the issue of debt. So in the next hour, you'll be telling us how far you've gone in this.
Great.
What maybe since you started, there was a lot of opaqueness. Now you have a bit of clarity on how much we owe and whom we owe. You'll tell us who we need to pay and how we can prioritize that, and then who we need to remove so that then we can stop paying some more. Keep it right here for that and more conversation coming up in the next hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. In the next hour, we talk about debt, and we'll be live on KTN Home. And in the 8 o'clock hour, we'll be having Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary in charge of the National Treasury and Planning. He's celebrating 1 year in office. He'll tell us what he's done in that 1 year. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Smack on 7 o'clock. Sugar Road, huge traffic as you head to town. Accident near Church Army, unfortunately, this morning. And that is what is causing the traffic as you're trying to then get through to the City Stadium roundabout. As you head on to Landys Road, that slows down just a little bit, trying to get into the CBD as well. Let's go on to Thika Road, where there's mad traffic at all stops. And then as you head down, the service lanes are flowing, but the highway also flowing, but not yet at bumper to bumper, but in some cases it is. As you get to the Pangani underpass. It's going to take you some time to get out of that. Wangari Maathai Road, always a good option, guys, as you get into the city. Shouldn't be too terrible using that. All right, coming off of Ngong Road, getting into the CBD, slow. And then you get to Valley Road, it's also slow, but you should be all right heading out. Coming out of Westlands, also into the CBD is slow. You can use the Red Hill bypass longer, but sure. We'll see what it looks like in a short while. Don't forget, get in touch with us, SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Let us know what it is that you see, or text on 40127. Let's see what this Wednesday morning pans out to be.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock. Thank you very
day.
much for tuning in to The Situation Room. This is the second hour of the show, beginning 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we want to welcome our audience on KTN Home. We'll be live with you for the next 2 hours. In the room this morning, in addition to C.T. Muga, Nduoko, and me, Eric Latif, we have Wanjiro Gekonyo. She's our guest host today. Wanjiro is the National Coordinator for the Institute for Social Accountability. And let's have a conversation about social accountability, especially when it comes to national debt. But before we do that, as our tradition dictates, we begin with today's proverb.
Men would not tell lies if women asked fewer.
CT, really,
Yes.
you could have done better. Let's leave it at that.
You could
You could have done ...
Better than ...
Where is this proverb from, City?
This one.
Yeah.
He created it. CT, you made
Heard about the book of
CT, you made this one
You
up.
know, even I have my limitations. I am
the book of Eli.
I know I have a vivid imagination, but surely, even with my imagination, could I have conjured up this?
No, this is
Tell us
beyond
where
you.
it's from.
No, this is truly beyond me. I know my limitation. This one is honestly beyond me.
So tell us where it's from.
Team Mafisi, Kenya.
I don't know which is more scandalous, that you actually subscribe to Timafisi or that you would then proceed to share a proverb
See,
from
as a purveyor of
Tim-
information, it's important that you gather information from all sources.
all sides.
Thank
all
you, Eric.
sources.
Because you see, people seem to have this view that proverbs need to be some ancient thing, wisdom that has been passed down the line for centuries.
From
No,
some druid living in a cave.
no. Yeah, some hermit. Okay, no. Some soothsayer. No.
Yes.
Even in modern times, there will be proverbs that come into being, or an interpretation or an understanding of that ancient proverb. So some of these things are precisely that.
Even from the current pack of hyenas.
Even from the current pack of hyenas currently constituted in the country of Kenya.
Got it.
Well, yes.
So
They
repeat the
also
proverb.
have their democratic
Men
right.
would not tell lies if women asked fewer.
Yeah, and if we analyze this proverb, one, we will note it is incomplete and therefore designed to elicit
A reaction and much further thought.
Completion.
Completion. Yes. Okay.
Oh boy.
Wanjiro. So the Institute for Social Accountability is among several civil society and professional organizations that came together last year to launch a campaign called Okoa Uchumi.
Right.
All right. So first, Okoa Uchumi was about looking at our public debt.
Right.
Okay. So give us an update on this.
Yes, we got together because we were very concerned. as civil society that we were engaged in various processes, whether it's at county level, in terms of doing budget monitoring, training citizens, working with counties. And we realized that national level priorities were squeezing the space for devolution. Was squeezing the resources available for county level planning. So yes, you elect a governor, blah, 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 but they come in and the finances aren't enough. And we realized there wasn't enough scrutiny at the national level, and particularly with regard to the debt situation. At this point, of course, everyone was aware we had a debt problem, businesses were struggling, revenues were falling, teachers were not getting paid and all of that. So we analyzed the situation and realized that the core of the problem was a lack of political accountability. And so what we seek to achieve as Okoa Uchumi is to build political accountability in debt management. We want increased public participation. We want increased transparency. We want accountability of our public officers in the way they administer debt. This has been an area that's been left to the Treasury and a few people, even Parliament, we realize has not been robust in terms of its oversight over debt. They make good pronouncements, but then continue to approve, dubious and irresponsible sometimes debt financing decisions. So that is why we came together. Then COVID happened, and a new angle was added to this, which is public resources need to enable the country recover. We need to identify those priorities that will cushion Kenyans and also help the country fight COVID and help the country recover. We've had some gains. There's a new administration in Treasury, and we have to acknowledge that we've seen some improvement in terms of some of the disclosures that are happening, but there continue to be gaps. And the issue of political accountability is still out there. So that's my long kind of analysis or snapshot of what we seek to do and where we are now.
Let me ask this question. In pursuit of this goal, and it is an excellent one, what role does public participation play in all this?
It's fundamental. Public participation is fundamental because of public participation is part of is an underlying tenet of democracy. It's fundamental to good governance and accountability. It's a foundational pillar of the Constitution. It's the foundation of the social contract. So that's the theory. When it comes to practice, we find that the public participation in the national budget is not happening in the way that it should. We are not able to engage robustly and achieve results. So, for instance, civil society is not able to engage with Treasury in the debt process. The public are not given a window for engagement in debt discussions because those key documents around which debt decisions are made tend to be open to online submissions. So you can do your memoranda, and we do that. The Treasury will kind of listen to some or may not. But then that's it. We are able then to engage a little bit at the parliamentary level. But what has happened under this administration and in Kenya actually, Parliament often will not override the decisions being made by the executive.
Yeah.
So unfortunately in Kenya, debt is still squarely under the Treasury, and the Treasury is still squarely under the OP. Instructions really come from the very top. So we do not have enough independence and accountability of the Treasury. We do not have enough independence of the debt management body. So we do not have enough oversight. So we don't have public participation, but even Parliament does not exercise oversight. So our debt, it's not a surprise that we're in a crisis.
But does our constitution confer upon Treasury any degree of independence? Because it is a government department.
Yeah, well,
it's a government ministry.
The constitution might not go into that level of detail. It is up to the framers of the law to craft separation of powers and the independence of individual offices.
Okay, now let me ask the question. Is there a time in our history or in any period of our democracy when Treasury has exhibited a certain degree, a certain operative word here, of independence?
You ask a very good question, and I'd say no, there isn't. I think you're getting to the heart of the matter, that we have a new constitution, but the culture is the same one. And the point is, who does Treasury serve? And in fact, that question hasn't even been asked. We were having a conversation sometime in 2019, and Dr. Mutaha Kangu, really went at lengths talking about we have to look at the powers of the Treasury. The Treasury is extremely powerful. To whom do they account?
Yeah.
Whose purposes do they serve?
Who should they be serving, basically? But if you think about it...
They should be upholding, quickly, the principles of public finance. But they are not. And when they don't...
In upholding the principles of public finance, but they are still answerable directly to the executive, the head of the executive, and then indirectly to the people of Kenya. So the head of the executive should be operating from that point where I know I'm upholding those entire principles of the constitution, of good governance, of everything else. So if the head of the executive or the leadership of the executive is not thinking in terms of what is in the best interest of the people, what's in the best interest of the republic, then those in the National Treasury will basically be forced to a certain corner, because they are professionals there who are thinking what's the best thing that we need to do to make sure that this country is running, to make sure that economic growth is there, to make sure that we can withstand the shocks that come, that will keep coming. So what is it that we can do? And then they'll advise the political decision makers. Yeah. And I think if the decision makers then are not upholding the tenets and the principles of good governance, of best interest of the public, we have a problem.
I think you put it really well, and I like the way you've broken that down, because on one hand, you've got the public service. On the other hand, you've got the executive. And at ministerial level, you have presidential appointments. And under the Constitution, all those appointments are then vetted by Parliament. So what we are saying, when you're talking about the independence of institutions and the accountability of institutions, is how well have we framed our public service and our public appointments. And we all know we have problems with our public appointments. And at the end of the day, the problem isn't in the law. It's also got to do with our culture. And there was a program called the Public Service Transformation Program that was running under the Kibaki administration that has since lost a lot of ground, that sought to do this, to look at how does this institution function, what are the bottlenecks in making it efficient. What are the gaps in law? So maybe there's a conversation we haven't had. We focus a lot on political power, and we forget there's a lot of power in the public service. So how strong is the Public Service Commission? How robust are those appointments? How robust are the accountability measures? Internal audit, accountability, all of that. So in a nutshell, as OCOA, when we are looking at political accountability, we are very encouraged that we've now gone into debt relief. One of the arguments we're making, and it's a very counterintuitive argument when you ask for your country, your sovereign country, to go for debt relief, because it seems like you're then saying that we're not that sovereign. We have to go begging. But we took the position we need debt relief, because if we don't get debt relief, we are taxing Kenyans to death. We won't be able to survive the COVID period. So we've now gone for debt relief, and with that come some requirements for accountability. And I think what we are keen to see is that those requirements for accountability be used to bridge the gaps that are presently there. The gaps in the independence of institutions notwithstanding, we have a point where we can start without having to go and say, let's change the law, let's look at the appointment. There's a point. IMF has said we need a comprehensive audit of all the debt, of all the projects that have been financed through debt. Can we start there? Can we get into that? And can we hear from the Treasury, how is this going to happen? Can we hear from Parliament? The Auditor General.
Through all these gaps and holes that we're talking about, which are clearly obvious, that are causing the problem. And we say that accountability is one of the, or rather in this point, lack of accountability is one of the problems why we cannot see clearly through all of this. I look at countries where systems work, and regardless of who is at the top in terms of the executive, the system works. Everybody comes in knowing that there are certain things that they're supposed to do and they are accountable, regardless of who it is. So is there a direct relation between, in Kenya now, between who sits at the position of executive and the accountability that we see, or in this case, not see, when it comes to getting this work done?
I think we can all, obviously there is. Political leadership matters. But also, we must recognize we're a country, we are a young democracy and a growing, evolving democracy. And so we will have, we'll go forward and we'll also have some regression. And so we have to ask ourselves, how do we play this? Do we rule the gaps, or do we push for the opportunities, or do we do both? In fact, they say when you're an emerging democracy, you have to be belligerent and also cooperative with government. So on one hand, you have to hammer them and say, yeah, we're very unhappy about the political leadership. These are bad political choices. We need to use maybe public interest litigation and all kinds of things, social sanction, to hold political leaders to account. But we also then need to work with the more structured engagement and say, can we work with the institutions that are available to push? So we need to show that transparency works while pushing for it to work. It's not enough to talk because, again, we have a political culture where you can publish a very detailed account of corruption and nothing happens. So we really need to, as a coalition, we don't claim to have all the answers, but we are in the space and we are trying to occupy the spaces that are available to push for accountability. Who was responsible for driving this country into debt? Can they be held accountable? What are the decisions that are being made now? Can those then be held up to the scrutiny that's required? So we are asking questions, we are giving proposals, and yeah.
But if you look at the behavior of our fellow citizens and their responses to some of these things that we all acknowledge as a Christian nation that we are, self-acclaimed Christian nation, we abhor certain practices and we condemn corruption. That's what we say. But if you look at our own actions, do you really think, you say you present a paper cataloging and clearly demonstrating issues that relate to corruption and directing specific examples, and yet the response is, do you really think that Kenyans are actually against corruption? In all honesty, are we really, or is it that it's an issue that we take exception to when it doesn't favor us? Or is it we wait for an opportunity when we ourselves can be corrupt and we rule the day when other people are enjoying the benefits of corruption and we are not included in this particular activity? Where are we? The reason why I'm asking this question, Wanjiru, is because what you and the coalition are doing is just not commendable. It's timely, it's appropriate. However, we point to the leaders. I've given this thing some thought, and we talk about the leaders, and then there are discussions about leaders are a product of the community and society they live in. Has corruption actually won our hearts? Has impunity actually become our alternate religion, where we all subscribe to it but pretend we don't?
I think we are in a corrupt system. We're in a very, very corrupt system. And it's no surprise that Kenya ranks among the highest in terms of corruption. Because corruption not only damages systems and structures, it then imbues the everyday life. And sometimes corruption even becomes a matter of necessity, where, you're in a hospital, you have to pay a bribe to facilitate. We used to laugh at those examples when we heard of them of other countries, but that's where we are. But back to the question. If you look at a very recent example of the COVID millionaires, was it billionaires?
Let's call them, for purpose of conversation, let's call them billionaires. Yes.
Yeah. If you look at that example and the outcry and the anger by Kenyans, and this is genuine anger, whether it was through media, in all platforms, Kenyans were disgusted. And had they had the means, they would have...
They do have the means.
So the point I want to make to you is Kenyans don't buy onto corruption. We are a corrupt country, and therefore our systems are very corrupted. But we should not accede to the notion, to acquiesce that we've acquiesced. Because I think there are enough Kenyans who are not happy with corruption that we had a big outcry when the COVID funds were stolen. And this forced then government to take action. And actually, for once, we actually saw kind of progress in terms of naming who, whether
what did we see?
People were named?
And then?
No. Yes. Whether the process...
There was some movement somewhere. There was some movement.
Senate,
National Assembly, the EACC.
Senate report, which
and in very quick succession. The point I make is this. Kenyans aren't happy with corruption. Kenyans did their part. The hue and cry was there. The anger was there. The public statements. By the way, engage with citizens. And the one thing they say, but how can they steal COVID money? No, the point is, the system then lets them down in terms of the follow-up. Now, we are in a governance system where we are waiting for governance institutions to take action. Now, let us not blame our society for the failures, for the governance failures of government. And I'm not saying that we're not complicit.
It isn't blame. It is looking at the reality of our compliance and our complacency and our adaptation to corrupt situations. It is a really good thing in many ways. It means that our leaders have a safety net. Because Kenyans will look, think,
cry out,
talk a little bit, and then adjust, figure, now.
Can I tell you something?
Before you go through that, even before, I won't forget, this thing sticks so clearly in my mind. If we're going to talk about this now, for example, on the 13th of March, when the first case of COVID was found, what did people say? People said, oh, fantastic.
World Bank money that's coming in, Kenya is now using an opportunity to lie about cases of COVID so that money can come in and it can be stolen, and that's how it's going to go. Do you see what has happened? They've come in, they've prescribed, and they've reached the end. There's a safety net. I agree with this, like CT is saying, because even those who are involved in what you want to call grand corruption, they know that noise will be made. It will be made for a certain period of time. They will be worn out and they will keep quiet, and they don't have to give any kind of answers or perform any kind of services of accountability, and that story will die down. It will be dead, and then they can move on. It's something that's accepted. Yeah. People even know that they will make noise for some time, but what will they say? Even these cases that we see made public, what is the general thought? That it will be made public, they will have a case, after a while it will die, and we will move on.
And
we're getting to a point. Let's take a break. Let's take a break so that you can come back and continue this conversation. We are having a conversation about public debt. Now we're moving into definitions of public debt, into public corruption, into corruption in the debt register, and all those things. That's why we are here where we are. 25 minutes after 7. We are live on Spice FM, on KTN Home, and online. In the room is CT Muga, Nduoko, Eric Latif, and Wenjiro Gekonyo. Good morning. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Malindi.
Sugar and spice and everything.
Okay, it's a little bit of sun in Nairobi this morning. 17 degrees is where we are currently. 27 the high and lows of 14 today. It's partly sunny in Nyeri as well at 17. Lows will be 11, highs of 25. We're looking at highs of 28 and lows of 12 in Nakuru today. It's cloudy at the moment. It's also cloudy in Eldoret at 19, highs of 26 and lows of 12. Looking at cloudy conditions in Kisumu at 19, highs of 27 and lows of 18. It's also cloudy in Kakamega at 19, highs of 30 and lows of 14. We're going to highs of 34 in Mombasa, partly sunny conditions at 26 at the moment. It's going to be partly sunny in Malindi through most parts of today, highs of 32 and lows of 25. We're looking at highs of 25 and lows of 18 in Kampala, and light rain already this morning at 20. It's sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, and we'll see highs of 33 and lows of 26. Sunny conditions in Johannesburg at 18 with highs of 28. Lagos is a haze over the city at 26. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 23. And Kinshasa is clear at 22. We'll go to highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Outer Ring Road this morning, quite jam-packed, and the middle lane this morning is just next to the footbridge, quite risky. There's been an accident there this morning, and so there is a standstill. Where there is a standstill, heads up guys, is on Uhuru Highway, moving at snail's pace, and we're not right even in the middle of traffic hour just yet. This is between the Nyeri Stadium roundabout and Haile Selassie roundabout, and it's moving very, very slowly on toward the CBD and then out towards Westlands. It's not moving as fast as we'd like it to, slowing down almost to a stop in some parts. So if you can find an alternate route to town, it would be longer, but if you need to use that, please go ahead and do so. Thika Road also, joining with Kiambu Road today, is an absolute mess. Can't call it anything less. Right now, you have to be brave for this one. Spice of MKE, talk to us, let us know where it is that you might be stuck. Don't forget, Eastern and Southern bypasses, Red Hill will also help you. 40127 is how you can text.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Conversation, the Situation Room on Spice FM, online and on KTN Home. In the room is Eric Latif, Nduoko, CT Muga, and our guest host today is Wanjiru Gikonyo. She's the National Coordinator at the Institute for Social Accountability. We are talking about our public debt register, the situation with the full disclosure of our public debt. Keep it right here also, because in the next hour at 8 o'clock, we'll be having a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary at the National Treasury and Planning, Ambassador Ukuriatani. So when we bring the conversation back to the issue of public debt, so where we are at now, we are paying close to R1 trillion back in debt. We have gotten some 2 DSSIs, that's a debt servicing initiative from the Paris Club. The Chinese have also indicated, okay, you guys have until the end of this financial year, and then you can resume paying the debts that you ought to be repaying. Now, do we know how much we owe? Do we know whom we owe?
Well, right now, we have an idea. Because one of the positive things I think that the ministry has done, Treasury has done, is that they have published the debt register. Of course, it's of concern that the debt register is 2 years out of date, but it's been published.
2 years out of date, what do you mean?
It's recorded until 2018.
Okay.
It is not up to date with regard to the previous financial year.
Is there a previous time when this debt register has been published?
When we looked, we found the 2012, 2013 register. So the debt register is a PFM requirement. There has been...
And PFM is who?
Oh, public finance. Sorry. Debt register is a public finance management requirement. Mm-hmm. And it is a foundation, it's a basic document that it's like your Bible if you're going to church. If you're looking at debt in terms of accountability, who was paid for what, it should be in the debt register. So number one, there has been intermittent compliance, which translates into non-compliance with the publishing of the register. Last year, in fact, Parliament held the Treasury to account and had refused to pass the budget because there was no debt register. But eventually they were given some information, they acquiesced. But then the register was published, but published without up-to-date data. Again, looking at the information, and it's in today's nation, there are gaps in the register in terms of there's some details that are missing. There's, in fact, Jaindi Kisero talks about their major inconsistencies. And some of the information provided is completely vague. And one of the, you can hide a lot. And in fact, they say the thieves are hidden in the register. They're hiding in the register. There's also some loans in there for projects that are stalled, that we are still paying, for which we are still paying debt. So on one hand, good, we have a register. And this is the point we are making. The system is corrupt. The system is not giving us information. It has produced some information. And Jaindi is saying that even with this inadequate register, we can do something. So, we can rule and say, we're going to push for up-to-date information. It's part of our right. But let's work with what we have. So when we're creating institutional change, because we want accountability in debt, I think looking at Jaindi's comments, one of the first things we'll do is analyze this register.
What would be
maybe have a public conversation.
I'm interested to know, in 2021, what would
it.
be the reason to give an out-of-date register? Because that's what it is, 2018, 2021.
Or an incomplete
what would be the reason
register.
to give an incomplete register of what your current debt status is? Mind you, you're paying currently. You're not paying for 2018. You're paying even for debt that you took as of last year.
Which means you have the data, because you can't pay if you don't have the data.
Right. So why give an incomplete register that's made public?
That's a question we need to ask the CS. It's really concerning that the information hasn't been captured in the register. It's really concerning that our parliament makes decisions without this information. Which means the basic requirements for approving debt in this country are not being met. And I think that's a question only the CS can answer. It could be political will. It could be political will or political will or political will.
It could be many things, but all of them will lead to the same thing.
I think the other thing is information management is a thing. It really is a thing. And our public finance system has been under a lot of reform, a lot of change. And data management is a challenge. But having said that, you're talking about the Treasury.
But here's, Wanjiru, we've talked
very
about... well-resourced
body
we've
with
made suggestions
all the capacities,
here, and we've looked at the merits of sharing information, even on a micro level, when you're looking at a basic unit of function, like family. The parents would tell their family, look, this is where we are. We are either superfluous in terms of what we have, or we're dealing with the nitty-gritty. We don't have enough. Look, this is where we are, guys, and this is how we have to adjust. That seems to work. Is there a danger on a macro level now when we're looking at government, national, to say this is where we are? So I can see where the management of information would come. If you don't really want the entire country to be in the know about how bad things really are, then I can see the reason why such information would be shared in the way in which it was. But is it dangerous, from your point of view, having worked within civil society, is it dangerous really to let the country know, as opposed to keeping it in the hands of just a few people who might be able to use that information? Is it dangerous being very clear and transparent about what the situation is when it comes to debt, when it comes to management of public funds? Is it dangerous?
I think you've almost answered your own question, and you framed it very well. And I'll go back to something that the former AG said. He said corruption is being written into the budget. And so projects are designed and created for the sole purpose, special purpose vehicles for corruption. Now, if this is the case, you can't give out that information, because the moment you give out that information, you're
exposing your own self.
Exactly.
And that's where now the danger lies. And this is where the National Assembly should just, be held to account. Forget about the National Treasury, the President, those MPs. Those are the ones who need to answer some of these questions. Look at what, for example, Jaindi is saying. He says, basically, this information, which is available in the National Treasury website or the debt register, is organized in very simple columns. Column number 1 is the creditor. Column number 2, the purpose for borrowing the loan, and then interest rate, and then the repayment terms, and then cumulative amounts repaid, and finally, the amount outstanding as at June 30th, 2018. This tells you this is for the financial year 2017-2018. Okay. He says, as you interrogate this data more closely, you'll see some glaring gaps. First, you find several cases where the column for cumulative amounts paid in servicing some of these loans are left blank. This is 2017-2018 data where how much have you paid? Blank. Not filled. Okay, it begs the question, if the information as basic as how much you've paid is left blank, how then do you even authenticate this information? How do you say this information is actually good? Other inconsistencies, for example, he came across instances where the column that is supposed to contain information on the tenures and schedules of repayment of loans is blank. Others where the information provided is vague. And he raises this issue and says, look in other countries. In a country like Mozambique, where there was a big scandal, remember the tuna issue? There was a big scandal because some people in the National Treasury, in government in Mozambique, had colluded with some people in commercial banks, international commercial banks, and they had come up with this way of borrowing some money, which was it was just a way of stealing public money. So it's not just about local. There are even international colluders and players in this. Now, if you don't have information on how much you borrowed, how much you owe, what the interest is, what the purpose for this was, how much you've paid, then what are you saying?
In fact,
and then we're talking about, and we're saying, this is our national debt register, it's published. It's just ticking boxes. We were supposed to publish. We published.
You've hit it. They've ticked a box that would allow them to meet the minimum standard of the law. Additional information that needs to be in the register includes the issue of underwriters, because underwriters who secure the debt have an interest in like in the Mozambique case. It's the people behind the scenes. So yes, there's the loan, but they are the people who enable this loan to happen, and a lot of the shenanigans go on there. So actually, the debt register should also show who is underwriting this debt, what is their interest, what is their conflict. The other information which Parliament asked for beginning of last year is where is the money going? Because sometimes you have a block figure saying district roads. You're like, which roads? Some of the projects are quite clear, but it has to be very specific. So when you give vague information, when information is missing, that is an avenue for stealing. And the last point I want to make when we come back to COVID and the COVID budget, what these interests around large infrastructure who are hiding in this register, what they do is that the government draws up a plan. For instance, now we have the ERS, Economic Recovery Strategy, prioritizing health, prioritizing agriculture, prioritizing the stimulus. But the people who are holding contracts look and say, nyinyi endeleeni, you go, munenda budget, endeni. Mwisho, the money goes into these non-performing loans and goes into the large infrastructure. So the point is that there are people hiding in this register who are able to countermand and circumvent the entire budget process. As we are busy saying, oh, yeah, civic education.
But is that really possible within a country if it doesn't have the collusion of the highest officers in the land? Is it really possible? Year in, year out, year in, year out. But that is not difficult to answer. What I find fascinating is that in this day and age, where no matter how hard you try to hide, you will be caught out and you will be found, people still perpetrate things that eventually, it'll come out. Eventually, it will come out. It doesn't matter how clever these individuals think they are. They don't have a monopoly on cleverness. It doesn't matter how crafty they believe they have gone around doing this. At some point, it's going to come out. And in this case, it's sooner rather than later.
In their mind, they will deal with it when it comes out.
You see, dealing with it brings me to the question that I really wanted to ask. Do we really have people in authority and in government who are averse to corruption?
I think we do.
Clean people.
They're averse. It's clear. You look at their actions, and they're even...
And by government, you mean the political side of government or the public side, the public service side of
Our
government?
politicians are a bit of a lost cause. So let's leave them out of this discussion.
Okay. So you mean the public
You know
service?
something, City? I liked the trajectory you were taking. Then you came back to this question you asked about the people. And I think we need to still focus on the systems, because you talked about the political leadership and you said, yes, when political leadership has entrenched interests, then the system doesn't work. So it's not really. I think there are lots of good people in public service. There are few bad ones.
Like these ones.
But
exactly.
no, but why? The question you're asking is why do people continue to perpetrate corruption, knowing it will be revealed? I think the tolerance to it being revealed has gone very high. People know, oh my gosh, I've been named in the media. But you'll be named, and in time,
people will forget.
Yeah,
people will forget. And the wheels of justice will not catch up with you. And if you remember what John told us, John Githongo, when he was talking about corruption, he was saying fighting corruption through the judicial process actually is the surest way to fail in your fight against corruption. Why? Because the courts can only manage a certain number of corruption cases at a time, because they are so intricate. You actually need the public service system to deal with it. You actually need systems to work. So the point, what am I saying? It comes back to political leadership. We have bad political leadership, we need to call it, but we have a few opportunities, a few levers to begin exercising good governance. And we don't need to brandish all of government corrupt, because that's not the point. The point is there are a few people countermanding the system, making public officers afraid to speak up.
Wanjiro,
yes.
Do we have people who are in government who are, this one, I'll join the politicians as well, who are willing to go against the dictates of the people who are responsible for their appointment?
Actually, for example,
people who can stand up to
yes,
look at this register
thank you.
now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Look at this register now. It was not compiled by the person at the top. And it is very clear that there's information that's missing, which we've already established that information, they have it. Now the person, because it's rudimentary now, the person now who is responsible for putting it together, knowing that there's information missing, has put it out in the manner in which they've put it out because they've been ordered to do just so. Afraid that if they don't do it, they either will lose their job, again, the person who has appointed them. Now, living under that cover, that if you don't do it as you have been told, you might either lose your job or something else onto what might happen to you. Now, that's the situation that we are dealing with.
You know, the situation
somebody
that we
else
have,
who is holding this over your head.
I think we have, yeah, you know.
Some years ago.
My thing, I know, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Wanjiro, it's not really that difficult. Many years ago, yes, indeed, and we should.
How useful
Unless
is
you
that?
show you're different, you are tied with the same brush. Which
Unless
other brush
you
should
now
we tie
say-
you
So
with?
it forces
Unless
you
you
to
now
stand
say,
out.
I know this is my job. I sit at the head of this particular department that's going to put this report together. And I'm supposed to be making this information public to Kenyans. I know that there's something that we should be making public that we are not. You're saying stand out, that person will be able to say, actually, you know what? I'm not going to be part of this.
Wanjiro, some
I will
years
not
ago-
be part of this. I will either stand aside, because if we're saying that truly, I will stand aside and I will not be
So what
part
you're
of this
saying is that the
process.
CS of Treasury or the Director of Public Debt should resign.
No.
That's what you're saying.
This CS...
No, they should refuse
They
to
should
do
No.
refuse
things.
to
Look.
to do things in the manner in which
Look,
we're talking about.
the
now.
CS
Refuse
is a
to be
year
part of
is
it.
a year in this
I won't.
office.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a busy ministry. 1 year.
City, you've just changed. Can you?
No,
be on
I
the
haven't
same-
changed. I'm
Yeah.
actually being factual. Look, many years ago, when President Moi was in power, He was a powerful president, and people did not differ with him, privately or even publicly. Maybe privately they did. See, privately we don't know, but publicly.
Yeah.
There was a minister for finance who did precisely that. With that statement, told the country we actually broke. Simple. We don't have money. It's not complicated. He lost that job.
A few hours later.
Oh, he lost that job. I mean, he stopped being finance minister. That was...
But he was telling the truth.
Yeah, no, but you see the thing
that,
is,
in my opinion, it's standing out saying, folks, you know, we're talking around this thing.
Who was this? Isahaki.
It was Nyachai.
let's be
Nyachai.
honest.
Yes, he said, look, Mr. Simon Nyachai said, we are broke. Nobody was supposed to say we are broke. We were supposed to dance around that issue, talk around it. He did.
Yeah, but now how? Let's be specific here. One, the president himself has accepted there is corruption in government.
Many
times.
Yeah.
So we need to be specific. Let's focus on something tangible because we're in a very unusual time where the head of state, who should be responsible for ensuring, for the political leadership, is the one who is most upset with corruption. Yet, corruption, do you see? So this is, so that is why it is more strategic for us to be very specific. And I think when we talk about debt, we are saying, Jaindi's last word, the thieves are hiding in the register. The World Bank and IMF, particularly the IMF, has called for a comprehensive external audit of this register. The DSSI requirements require public participation and accountability in this whole relief process. So what we are saying is that we have good conditions now to audit the register, to ensure public participation, civil society engages, and that is what we need to push for,
now,
so that we can get these
is
seeds.
Responsible for doing these things that you're talking about?
Good point.
Who is that? Who is responsible for doing this? Ensuring that there's public participation, ensuring that a proper audit of this register is done, ensuring that all these places where these thieves we are saying are hiding then are opened up. Who is responsible for that? And that is not under the influence of a higher power who wants to make sure that information is not made public.
Yes, but Ndu, let's ask that question proactively, because who is responsible for upholding it's the CS. It is very clear that the CS is responsible for upholding those principles, right? What we are then going to ask the CS is, how do we take this forward? First, why are there gaps in the register? Two, how do we ensure what are the plans for the external audit to ensure it's comprehensive? As civil society, one of our lamentations and one of our proposals to the CS, who is a year in office. So actually, we are not that hard on this CS because ever since the CS came in, we have seen some positive action.
He inherited a lot of problems.
He inherited a lot of problems. We've seen more disclosures. The one thing we haven't been successful in getting is we are not able to really reach. We don't have a civil society. We can't say there is good public participation, good engagement with civil society. For instance, we've been asking, would we have a public forum on debt where you come and talk to people and field questions, that really is open?
Wanjiru, let me ask you this question. I personally like what civil society does. I love it, actually. But have you asked the question why it is the public support which you ought to have, in my mind, has not been as forthcoming as it should? Because the role that civil society plays in this country is actually the opposition. Because you point out these things. The public knows what you're saying is true. You have evidence to support what you're saying. But the public sits back and watches. So are we a nation of spectators?
It comes back to that question that you were asking.
Yes.
Whether we are part and parcel of this corruption. And I think my answer to that is in how we define corruption. Corruption is when somebody else is eating. That's it.
When you're bribing a policeman.
When somebody else is doing
it.
When you're not the beneficiary or the perpetrator or somebody close to you. For example, now look at the latest spat between Kalonzo Musyoka and William Ruto, right? Oh, you stole land. No, you're the bigger thief.
And both in Kanu,
okay?
For heaven's sake.
You're
They're
the bigger
beneficiaries
thief
of that system.
You are the thief. If you look at their supporters, all in social media, in public places, you will now see people who line up with Kalonzo's side and say, that guy is the one who's a bigger thief. You'll see people who support William Ruto's pointing fingers and saying, but you see that NYS land. And let's not talk about any side that we've been... As far as they're concerned, so we've defined corruption into, if I support William Ruto in this particular conversation, it's Kalonzo who's corrupt. If I support Kalonzo, it is Ruto who's corrupt. And that it ends there. So that conversation will just end. If those two gentlemen shake hands, there's no corruption.
Eric, you put it well.
It cancels out.
Yeah, in fact, your wisdom even goes beyond your new denomination. You're speaking very well today. But I go back to this. When you're in a situation of endemic corruption, you will have these kind of contradictions. And so we have to find a lever. The aim is when you're in an inherently corrupt, compromised system, which is what we are in, where even good people lie low, we have to look for levers. And we need to differentiate symptoms from causes. My view is that public engagement and this kind of acceptance of corruption is because this is not the cause of the corruption. It's a symptom of it. The cause is the lack of political accountability. And that's what we have to make corruption expensive for somebody. And it has to be for our political leaders.
You see my problem,
and the question is, how do we do that? How do we make it expensive for parliament that has been asleep on the job?
Remember, it's against a backdrop. Everything you say is true, but it's against a backdrop of us having normalized corruption. The example Eric gives is the perfect one. We've normalized it. And corruption should be exceptional. Wrongdoing should be exceptional. But when wrongdoing in whatever form
becomes normal, has become normal.
That really, in my opinion, is the problem. Forget the leaders and what have these people live in this country. They are part of us. They are our relatives. They are friends. The people we know. The normalizing of this wrong thing, where wrong has now become right. And wrong has become okay.
Siti, what I agree with you. We have normalized it. And the point that I'm making is that we then need to ask, how do we deal with corruption? Do we do mass civic education? Do we do BBI? BBI is proposing to deal with corruption by giving us a national ethos.
Yep.
A national ethos will stop us
from
being...
doesn't exist.
Yes, we have a national ethos that favors corruption. So national ethos... So we need to deal with the cause. And that's, I agree with you. But I believe that there are small opportunities in which we can begin to show that corruption is expensive. And I'm saying this from a civil society point of view. We don't have the resources government has. We are outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned.
No,
but we've got something on our side.
You're not outgunned.
We're not outgunned, eh?
No. You've actually taken over a role that the church should actually be playing in many ways.
Church and the opposition.
Yes. I'm saying this because when you play the role of a conscience, it's a role the church abrogated. It's their role, but somehow I think they found it more profitable to join whatever administrative system that we have. Once in a while you hear a lone voice saying something that they ought to have said, but most times they just they are compliant. But let me explain this. This didn't begin now. There was a gentleman by the name of Paul Ngei. Paul Ngei seemed to have been loved by the then President Jomo Kenyatta because that man perpetrated things that were beyond his time. When he was minister in charge of agriculture, that man was thrown out of office because he misplaced 2,000 bags of maize, which were meant for debt relief. Okay? Among the many ills that man perpetrated, we actually had a constitutional moment when the president had to alter certain things so that this guy remains. It went that far. But the president liked him. And the president had those powers.
Exactly.
Now, what I'm saying is, it was not normal then, and it was treated as something that was considered an aberration. We do the complete opposite right now. We celebrate thieves.
It was how many bags of maize again?
2,000.
Surely.
The small peanuts.
That was something to make it a big conversation. You see, that's the problem we have right now. Let's take a break on KTN Home. We are taking a break on KTN Home. We'll continue the conversations on Spice FM in the next hour on KTN Home as well. We'll be having a conversation with Ukur Yatani, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning. Right now, we are having a conversation about national debt. We have our debt register now, which is about 2 financial years ago. But we also have conversations about who do we owe, how much do we owe, are we about to raise the debt ceiling? Now, what conditions should be put in place by the National Assembly when we talk about raising the debt ceiling, or even by the Senate? All this, keep it right here for this and more. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
All right, as we wait for Katie and Home to come back to us, we continue with this conversation. So, Wanjiru, you seem to be saying that there's something that can be done, in terms of changing this whole conversation, changing the national psyche on how to deal with corruption. If you look at what the government has done, in terms of saying, let's go for the big fish, let's parade the DPP and the EACC and the DCI saying, let's go for these high impact cases. Take the cabinet secretary in charge of the National Treasury to court and charge him. Take a governor to court and charge him. Is that one of the things that you're saying? Beyond that, then how else do we make sure that we are dealing with corruption, making corruption, because what you're saying is let's make corruption an expensive venture.
Right. And I will not purport to have solutions for one of the most preponderant problems we have as a country, which is corruption.
I can help you.
But,
I have a solution.
But, I think the justice system, of course, is not the most effective way of fighting corruption. It's not working. We need to build social sanction. So as a coalition, in my view, our success will be defined by the extent to which we are able to identify those perpetrators of corruption around debt and to build social sanction against them. Whether the legal process comes in or not, we want to make it expensive in the eyes of Kenyans so that that person becomes an anathema.
So by social sanction is basically saying, you are my neighbor, I'm no longer going to talk to you.
Yes.
My children will not play with you.
When you come to church, you sit at the back or sit quietly, we won't take your money.
From the mindset of admiring these people whom we know have perpetrated ill. Progressive governments like the Chinese government understand how to deal with these things. Because
sentence you to death.
No, they shoot you.
They shoot you.
Because, yes, it is considered crime against humanity. Because that's what it is.
You take life, yours is taken.
When you commit these really
this is the same
atrocious
government that
things,
sanctions corruption in other countries that aren't China. So be very careful when you cite China as a positive example, because
No, in this particular case, not on everything.
You have to look holistically. A government that's able to shoot you for corruption also has suspended your other human rights. We do not want
just corruption.
We do not want to suspend or compromise our human rights. We are saying in a human rights, socio-economic rights setting, how do we enforce corruption?
This aberration, what about their human rights? If you're found, look, we have a court of law, we have a system. If you're found guilty of crimes, these crimes which I'm calling crimes against
COVID.
Yes, and why have they died? People who didn't need to die.
Yes.
Right. Now, when you're talking about the
people
deaths,
die of hunger who don't need to die.
When you're, in Kenya, is the death sentence even legal?
It is.
It is
legal.
It's still upheld in Kenya.
It's still upheld, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's
The courts have basically just suspended issuing them, but it's still
right. My view is this: China is a bad example because it is one of the bigger perpetrators of corruption, even in our setting.
Okay, forget the name
right?
China.
So
talk about
when you have
speedy. Bringing somebody speedily to justice and executing them.
We need speedy justice. But then when you're talking about speedy justice, you have to look at what is happening in terms of the interference with the judiciary.
You see, now you're interfering with a process that actually would bring about change. Did you see what you're doing?
No. I believe we need to uphold
You're fighting change.
Democratic, human rights, socio-economic principles, and we need to find accountability in that framework.
Whose rights
How do you do that?
Whose rights take precedence?
All this time that they've been trying to do it, it didn't
Yes,
work.
exactly. Who?
It hasn't worked.
Who's the victim
all
here?
this time.
What do you mean?
It hasn't worked all this time.
Yeah, because our political
You're telling
leaders...
people you need to stop
guys,
corruption, and they say you blow in their air and pamper them. It can't
Let's
happen.
take a look at traffic shortly in a couple of seconds. And then after that, we have a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary in charge of the National Treasury and Planning, Ambassador Kuriatani. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, when Wayaki Way was looking a little better, then we had an accident. So approach with caution if you're headed in that direction. Right around White House, so please be very careful there. Bad on Langata Road, getting into the CBD as well, not looking very smooth. Outer Ring Road continues to give up those terrible vibes this morning. It's not moving at all. Getting on Thika Road, it's also quite bad. Major traffic on Thika Road this morning. Joining from Kiambu Road as well, not moving. Now, let's step out of Nairobi. Heavy traffic along the Mombasa Malindi highway today, and you're being advised to use the Nyeri link roads because the highway is not moving at all. Coming back into the city, getting off Langata Road and then joining with Timor roundabout out towards Bagavi Way or then down towards Nyayo Stadium. Uhuru Highway is not moving, guys, so you want to find an alternate route if you're in a hurry. So it's traffic all over the place wherever you look. Let's try and navigate as smoothly as we can. Spice FMKE, get in touch in case something goes out, and text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to
Thank
start.
you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room. This is the third hour of our show. We begin the show at 6 a.m. and we conclude it at 10. We're live on Spice FM. We are live online, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, www.spicefm.co.ke. And we're also live on KTN Home. Also with us in the room this morning is Wanjiru Gikonyo. She's our guest host today. She is the National Coordinator at the Institute for Social Accountability. Our guest for the next hour is the Cabinet Secretary of the National Treasury and Planning, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, and he's on the line. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
You know, when you talk to cabinet secretaries, you normally say honorable minister. But now this man has been an ambassador, he has been a governor, he's used to being called His Excellency. So now we are here. His Excellency, the Honorable Ambassador.
Why don't you throw in Mheshimiwa?
Okay. Ambassador Ukur Yatani, 1 year, 5 days ago, 6 days ago, you took over as the Cabinet Secretary at the National Treasury. It has been the year. You come in and almost immediately there is COVID. You come in and almost immediately you are the one who is saying, let's give people some relief in terms of the revenues that we collect. All those things. What lessons have you learned, have you taken in the 1 year in office at the National Treasury?
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And it's a rare privilege to engage you and to engage Kenyans on this very important matter of the economy. The economy is the heart of business. The economy is the heart of life. Every matter revolves around the state of your domestic economy, the national economy. The environment is very, very important. And for the economy to be right, then the perspective, the attitude, and the focus of what Kenyans, like any other part of the world, we need to really be headed in one direction. As you indicated, that true that having had the privilege of having this country as a cabinet secretary in another decade, I was given the rare privilege to steer the economy 1 year ago. This is a very heavy decade, it's a very heavy expectation, because it is the heart of government and it's the heart of the people. And I've never had illusions about my job. The weight of the job is not every single moment as I cherish the privilege of serving, I also never lost focus on the weight and the burden of steering an economy of a developing country, an economy of a region that requires more than, fixing the fiscal framework. It is just much more and requires thinking and planning the future. On assuming office, I had no illusions that a number of things need to be fixed. Things have been going on well. The growth was commendable. But the areas that we could do savings, and we embarked on the fiscal consolidation, balancing our fiscal framework, balancing our budget, having revenue streams that make sense and that are predictable, but will not give ourselves projections that we don't realize. And based on those projections, when we come out with expenditure, we have seen cases where we underperform. And then there's a attendant challenge of now carrying forward good payment bills and straining businesses and reducing the faith that the business community has in doing business with government. So my key priority then was to work on a fiscal consolidation process where we have set realistic revenue targets. We came up with rationalized expenditure, getting rid of a number of expenditures that we could do without for the time being. And many of them are in areas that we can afford, like foreign travel, which was really a drain on the foreign reserve. And then thirdly, we also unpacked our debt situation because when there's challenge between, when there's difference between revenue and compared to use expenditure, what do you do with the shortfall?
Bonasias, I think we don't have a clear audio. Let's try and sort that out with you as we have this conversation. We're having a conversation with the Cabinet Secretary of the National Treasury, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, 1 year, 4 days or 5 days or so since he took over the office at the National Treasury. He was appointed on the 14th day of January last year. So as he says, immediately you come in and then there are all these things that happen in the country. There's COVID that comes in. It requires money. It requires some efforts to be done. There's the revenue dip. Then there's something that you need to work on. There is, all the debts that we need to pay. There's servicing of national government operations. I mean, he came in. If you can just think about him, you feel like, oh my goodness, it could be the best time because he gets all the limelight, but also the worst time because he doesn't get to sleep.
His Excellency was thrown into the deep end, clearly. Now, what we need to find out is whether he was given life-saving equipment or whether there is available within that ministry, within our system, the sort of support that someone in his position and with the situation he finds himself in is actually empowered to find a way forward. Because you could land yourself in that particular position and it doesn't matter which way you look. It doesn't matter what you try. It doesn't matter whether it's a tumble turn or whatever it is. The way forward is simply not just difficult but almost non-existent. But this is something that only he can tell us.
Oh, it looks like, thrown into the deep end, and unfortunately it seems like there's deep end everywhere, right? It's not like there's a part that's shallow. There's so many issues at the same time that need to be dealt with, and this is not even sink or swim. It's just remain alive at this point. Where are you going to? Because he did inherit quite a lot. This is what we're looking at. There were many problems that were on the table even when he came in, not even to mention what needed to be added coming in.
So, Bonasias, the sound is better now. We can now get you a bit better. So just tell us the impact that COVID-19 has had on our economy so far. Just from your year in office, looking at the books before, looking at the books during, and where we are at right now, what would you say is the biggest impact that we've had from COVID?
Yeah, I think before the interaction, I was saying that we had set out on a fiscal consolidation process, balancing our fiscal framework, ensuring that whatever resources we collect, we adjust our expenditure to that level so that we can go for modest borrowing and mainly from the concessional window where interest rates are favorable and the payments are long the distant future, sometimes also 3 years, 30 years. But when we are busy and in the heart of making sure that the fiscal consolidation was achieved, we were hit by a very a situation that never experienced in this country, the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses, people, governments, there was panic all over. We are not sure how to deal with it, and as a result of this, we had to now revise our fiscal framework. We had to suspend a number of those rationalized expenditure because we needed to direct resources to the Ministry of Health. We needed to direct resources to supporting the vulnerable segment of the population. We needed to direct resources to support businesses. That's how we came up with the first relief in terms of the fiscal intervention. We had to revise our taxes by reducing tax on the VAT, income tax, giving concession to businesses so that they do not lose people in terms of jobs and opportunities, giving them relief. And at the same time, we also had to work out and ensure, make provision, most businesses are paid for in terms of pending bids. We have to continue supporting the vulnerable segments, mainly the urban unemployed, because businesses were shutting down, manufacturing was going down. And the net sum of all these, we had to forego Kenya shilling 172 billion in form of lost revenue. So what do we do? With enhanced expenditure, there are a lot of activities that have to be taken, including within the informal settlements within the urban centers. We had to do boreholes to make sure that, people have clean and safe drinking water. People have water to use, to clean. We did 100 boreholes in a span of 2 months. We had to clean and expand roads in the informal settlements. We had to give relief in form of cash transfers. We had to do a number of interventions. So, based against these, with lost revenue and increased expenditure, our fiscal framework was no longer feasible. The one we had envisioned was no longer feasible. What do you have to do? So we are torn between very difficult situations. Do we now allow, and unless there's expenditure, business cannot thrive. Unless there's expenditure, country cannot grow. Expenditure stimulus. We want jobs, but therefore there have to be expenditure. The government has to spend money to create jobs and opportunities for the private sector. We have to continue enhancing liquidity in the domestic front. That's how we were able to come down, intervene, on the monetary level, ensuring that, the central bank rates are lowered. We had to release liquidity to the commercial bank for onward lending up to about 35 billion Kenya shillings. So the net sum of all these was to make the economy continue, struggling and surviving and remaining afloat. These are things that were to change. And, sometimes we've been bombarded with questions that, how come that you are envisioned rationalized expenditure, fiscal consolidation, and now we are borrowing. What options did you have? Because these are situations that are never planned for. We had to borrow because we had to make a decision. Because if we didn't borrow, the economy is going to slump. We are going to have a slump economy, and as a result, there's going to be loss of jobs. There's going to be desperation. But we said, these are things that we can deal with this in the future, and we only borrowed concessionally. That's how we went to IMF. On the emergency fund, we got 75 billion Kenya shillings, and the next time of all these is that it's like free money. Not really free money, but because it has zero interest rate. The World Bank we borrowed, and we had an interest rate of 1.4%. So for the the last 1 year that I've been in this office, we never borrowed commercially. We never even gone to a situation where we borrowed but any loan that was given interest of 2%. So we have a duty. As a government, we have a duty to deal with situations as they are in whatever emergency nature, because there are many people, all this country, generally, the population of this country depends on the sound policy management of government to provide hope and opportunities for the future. Other emerging issues that have come along, including maybe the raising of the debt amount, are matters that we can deal with in the future. But I want to assure you that we borrow concessionally, we borrow sustainably, weighed against the region, weighed against the rest of the globe, our borrowing is highly concessional. But we cannot really pretend that COVID has not affected us. It has not only affected Kenya, but it has affected everybody. And these are things that we are wading through without necessarily losing our key objective of making sure that the business thrives. Like one very important thing is that we realize that the informal settlement, not really the informal sector, is the engine of growth and employment opportunities in this country. And that's why the SMEs, we've given them that opportunity and created a credit guarantee scheme by pooling resources, by de-risking, borrowing. Government creates a buffer zone where should there be any default on the part of money borrowed from the commercial bank, the government guarantees this private sector. Because the bulk of the employment and opportunities in this country are in the SMEs. And that is why we are focusing on that by creating the credit guarantee scheme, by making the work environment in these areas not only affordable, but also can thrive and trigger further growth, further investment, for our people. Yeah.
Buenos thank you so much. And sorry to interrupt. It's a pleasure to be. It's a pleasure to be here to be able to share with you. I represent a group calling itself the Okoa Uchumi Initiative. And we came together just before you got into office, and we were concerned about debt even before COVID, because debt had risen to unsustainable amounts and was eating into the ability of government really to deliver services. So I believe it's not just COVID, and I think even you're on record as saying it's not just COVID that has impacted our financial position. And I think we appreciate the good work you've done while you've been there. I appreciate also the publishing of the economic recovery strategy. But there are some questions. We've sought a relief of 6 months from the Paris Club and again from China. Is this period enough? And we are also aware with the publishing of the debt register that we have some loans in there that are non-performing loans for stalled projects that we are still paying. We also see that the government continues to want to undertake large infrastructure. So are we getting relief that will then go towards paying non-performing loans? Are we getting relief and then we spend on new infrastructure projects at the expense of the objectives that you are outlined in the economic recovery strategy? Are the political pressures stronger than what your office can bear? What guarantees are there for us as Kenyans as we are being taxed heavily? The tax relief measures have been lifted so that the tax burden is really falling on Kenyans and falling on the poorest. And the concern is that that money is then going into projects that are not priorities in terms of the economic recovery. They are priorities for a small group of beneficiaries around those infrastructure projects.
But yes, you can take now the question.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your input. I had indicated earlier that every country, based on its own situations, are alive and they aspire to realize development, more development, because development, particularly in the infrastructure sector, is what stimulates growth. It's what creates jobs. It what creates better venue for people to continue thriving as an economy. And it's clear that we cannot raise all the necessary resources to do all the infrastructural projects at once. That's why countries borrow, but they borrow to make lives of people better and realize, the much needed development now and also in the future. Concerning debt, it's not true that my sister, the way she indicated, that at a sustainable level. Kenyan debt position is highly sustainable. Kenya has never defaulted on any. Our debt is about 60% to GDP. If you look at the region, all countries, many countries, some of them are in the range of 200% or even 250% of GDP. Most of the developed countries are the range of 110, 130 to 200 of the GDP. Even the region, we are the same. And the fact that Kenya never defaulted and they are in good books and we continue attracting as much resources as possible is something to be happy about. I agree with you that there are some loans which you borrowed before that are run into challenges and they are actually more or less considered dormant because we are not absorbing or we are not implementing those projects.
Bonus, yes, may I ask you?
In the National Treasury, we have now reclassified this and we have done reprogramming. Those dormant loans, we have entered into negotiations with the partners, and now we have reprogrammed without necessarily striking off our debt book. We are now substituting that because in a situation where the absorption is low, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to continue paying interest or commitment fee when the intended objective of realizing development is not realized. So we have reprogrammed this. We have also classified a few that are candidates for cancellation, and we are looking at, maybe just to mention, the G20 DSSI position, debt service support. We are happy that, based on our request, the Paris Club have extended really not a waiver, but a suspension of payment for the next 4 years on loans that are going to fall due between January this year to June this year. And the amount of about 32 billion, close to 33 billion Kenyan shillings. That is for countries falling under the Paris Club. We are also happy to announce that our engagement with China, where we hold about 27 billion, which was due for payment between January and June, we are now not going to pay immediately, but we are going to pay in the future. The net sum of all these will give us an opportunity and a break on the kind of liquidity, that we desire. We can now use that money to honor our other obligations, including continuing to finance governments, both the national government and the county governments as required. So we are happy. And those things are not automatic. It depends on the ability and the faith and confidence that those partners have in our country. There are many that request for this relief, but they don't get it because they are considered extremely high risk and they are likely to default. We are not defaulting. Even the one for China, we were actually prepared every arrangement to pay by today. But 2 days ago, after our engagement, we are happy to get feedback that we don't need to pay now. We are going to pay in the future to give us a break in the management of our fiscal framework. But more importantly, I just want to add that having realized all these, we are now looking beyond the traditional ways of managing our fiscal framework through on revenue, cutting on expenditure, reducing on loans, but also more importantly, we want to continue to maintain the tempo and progress of realization of development by looking at alternative funding. And we've realized that one of the low-hanging fruits is a public-private partnership. It can work. They don't have necessarily be engineered or supported or implemented by foreign agencies. Even locally, there are a lot of opportunities for projects to be undertaken based on a PPP arrangement. And to that effect, we've upgraded the unit and is now being headed by a Director General and who has wealth of knowledge and experience and exposure in managing the private affairs, having been bankers, having been investment agency for a long time. We think this is going to continue realizing the kind of desired development that we have in this country, and this is where we are going. Lastly, we have come up with a very elaborate roadmap on the economic recovery for now and for the future. As not only post COVID-19, but we want to put our economy on the trajectory of more growth, realization of more development, and making sure that the social sector, including health, education, and the rest, continue to be funded as required. And one key area that we've also identified, having learned lessons from COVID-19, is that IT is proving to be a very important essential ingredient in stimulating the economy. You have realized that most meetings, most businesses, even schools were running even when people are staying at home. So we realize this is a very important area that we need to continue investing to support our economy and to grow our economy. Kenya occupies a very unique position in the region, and we want as a financial center within the region. And already now we have established an international financial center here in Nairobi that's going to act as a catalyst for the region and to enable the ease and the confidence of business building in this region.
Okay. Let's take a break at this point at 26 minutes after 8. We're having a conversation with Ambassador Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning, looking at 1 year in office, what his lessons have been, and also looking at the debt situation. Remember, today's conversation is about public debt and personal debt situation in the country, how we're managing that, and also the projects in the country.
Personal debt.
Yes, we also have a conversation on personal debt that's coming up in the next hour. 26 minutes after 8. Keep it right here. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique, the official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be. The weather.
Right, we're looking at sunny conditions in Nairobi, currently at 17 degrees. We'll look at a low of 14 today, going to highs of 27. 11 degrees the low in Nyeri, highs of 25. Partly sunny conditions through the day. It's cloudy in Nakuru at 19, highs of 28 and lows of 12. It's also cloudy in Eldoret at 19, going to highs of 26 and lows of 12. 18 degrees will be the low in Kisumu today, where it's cloudy at 19 degrees, going to highs of 27. We're looking at 14 as the low in Kakamega at 19 at the moment, going to highs of 30. 26 at the moment in Mombasa, highs of 34 and lows of 24 today. The highs will be 32 and lows of 25, and partly sunny through Malindi. Light rain continues in Kampala at 20, highs of 25. 33 the high in Dar es Salaam today, mostly sunny conditions, currently at 26. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 18 degrees. We'll see a low of 15 and lows and highs of 28. Highs of 33 in Lagos today, where it's still hazy and foggy. 26 at the moment. And in Kinshasa, it's clear at 22 still, highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Chilled Spice.
Okay, so Peponi Road, Limuru Road today. These are the no-go zones. If you don't have to be in that area, please use an alternate route. If you're trying to get into Westlands, if you're trying to get into the CBD, don't use those today. Thika Road, parking lot, unfortunately, back to default settings with everybody out today. So this one needs some patience getting off of Thika Road. Getting off of Jogo Road as well, as you're trying to get to Landis Road or you're trying to get into industrial area, is moving still very, very slowly right about now, as is Mombasa Road, moving very slowly. The service lane is not helping either. As trying to get then past Cabanas out towards General Motors. Uhuru Highway, jam-packed as well. Bumper to bumper now, where it was flowing smoothly, is taking some time to get off of that into the CBD. We're smack in the middle of traffic hour, guys, so it needs some patience. Some avoidable routes, please avoid them. You can use the bypasses. Those seem to be working very well today. Talk to us, Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text us 40127.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
This is
FM.
Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. This and every weekday morning, you have Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, CT Muga. And today, our guest host is Wanjiru Gekonyo, the National Coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability. And our guest this hour is Ambassador Ukur Yatani, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning.
Your Excellency, Bwana Ambassador, I'm CT Muga. You were MP for North Hor a border constituency. You then were our representative to the UN in Vienna, and you were also governor of Marsabit, once the largest district in this country. How would you say the experience in all these dockets have prepared you for the turbulent waters of the docket you now hold?
Yeah, thank you very much. Regarding your question, I consider myself a very lucky Kenyan. Very, very lucky indeed, because my public life experience, I have had a stint in almost every sector of this country and also regions that I have worked. I have been a district officer. I have worked in many, many countries, counties. I have also been a district commissioner. I have been a member of parliament. I had an opportunity to serve as an assistant minister in the Ministry of Science and Technology. I had also the rare privilege where His Excellency President Kibaki appointed me as a permanent representative and ambassador to Austria, where I also accredited to other countries like Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, and the rest. But more importantly also, I had an opportunity to serve as one of the governors, pioneer governors, in a very, in a county on the frontier. And now I'm here. I consider this as a privilege, an opportunity that people and God has given me to give service with humility, to give my best, and to share whatever advantage that I have. I don't consider myself, that, well, not necessarily, the brightest, the sharpest, the most experienced, the most learned, but it's a duty for me. I work hard, I give my best. I know that this is a calling in whatever public position you serve. It's a calling to serve humanity, it's a calling to serve the people and to give the best and support the president who has given me this opportunity to remain loyal to him, to work for him and to work for the country and bring a difference and do it with the utmost honesty. But I must also indicate that this experience and being working in different areas, it doesn't come easy. It comes with challenges, it comes with expectations, it comes with a lot of also individuals who are bent on undermining your good intentions. But the whole of it is that I feel so privileged, and when I exit public service, I'll be a very happy man that I have done my best in whatever capacity that I have had an opportunity to serve. But if you allow me, I want to have just 1 minute to tell you, I want to assure Kenyans that the worst times are over. We have now devised, and Kenyans are resilient. Our economy is resilient. We are back on track, and the projections are very good. We are now looking at higher growth. We are looking at higher projected growth. We now, since last month, we started meeting our revenue targets. KRA has posted very impressive revenue outcome. The faith in this country through the diaspora remittance are increasing. We have very stable inflation. We have the interest rates of the banks are going down. We now continue to rationalize expenditure as government because we know it's in our domain that what counts for us more importantly is the resources that we have the disposable resources that are in our hands. And knowing that if we can plan well by only using these resources on areas and sectors that are going to have big impact for the economy, and also noting that the government is just a facilitator, the provider of the right and conducive economic environment for economy to grow, will continue to support the private sector, mainly the SMEs, by giving the opportunity to have access to finances. And through that, they will continue to ward against, the turbulent times, and even expand their businesses for creation of more jobs, for creation of more income, for the betterment and the lives of our people. That does not mean that we are also going to neglect the social sector. If you look at the educational sector, particularly now, is a very important sector in this country. And the fact that when the schools were shut, big segment of the economy was actually grounded somehow because many people, industries, businesses, individuals, employment were depending on the education sector because they have that multiplier effect. Now, since the schools are open and institutions are now back in business, last week alone, we gave out 19.5 billion Kenyan shillings to support both primary and secondary schools. These are heavy injection into that sector, and they are going to the ripple effect. The hands of the benefits, the stimulants are going to be felt at all levels. I also want to assure Kenyans that we are alive to the need and expectation of Kenyans that it's high time we continue managing our debt, and that's why we'll borrow, but we'll only borrow concessionally. Things that's going to really change the lives of the people without necessarily putting undue pressure and heavy burden in the generations now and the generations in the future.
CS,
we are also
if
now towards the tail end on cancelling some of those loans which are either running into challenges. We are reprogramming a number of these. We are also in the process of now refinancing some of those expensive loans because we do it for Kenyans, and we want to ensure that the desire of our president, who has worked so hard, for those of us in the treasury, we know that within the last few years, we've realized so much development. If you see the kind of investment that has gone into Nairobi alone, because most of you live here, we can see the transformation that has taken in the informal settlement.
Talking about the operations of government, CS, now looking at some of the things that have come out into the open. Last week, the Council of Governors, talked about the fact that they would go on strike because they didn't have what they needed in terms of budgetary allocation. They say they've been cash starved. You said that they should be able to withdraw from the emergency fund. Who is looking at what now? How are we going to go about this? Counties say they don't have money. They're not able to pay staff. They're not able to run the operations of county. You say they should withdraw from emergency fund. Who should we believe?
Foremost, let me correct, because that's not the position. Because it's really nothing like emergency fund. And they were never asked to draw money from the emergency fund. What we told them is that indeed, counties get money from the National Treasury every month. But we also realized that the money we give to the county government, most of them are just stuck in their own account at Central Bank, at the county revenue fund. Meaning, the over 34 billion Kenyan shillings are just stuck there, not for 1 month, for 2 months, for a number of months, because of the slow absorption by the county government. And we did not see the rationalization, why we should continue giving you money when the ability to spend the money that you've been given is either not there or there's no hurry. So it's in that context we are telling them, we'll give you the money, we are rightful share, but also spend money. We are less than 5 months to closure, to the end of our financial year. And during the end of financial year, sometimes there is temptation to spend money towards the last month, and the process, incur all sorts of unwarranted expenditure. And many times that a lot of this money maybe are not used for what was planned for.
I'm a layman who's a bit ignorant on these matters.
Maybe just lastly, I want to say,
yes,
I just to confirm that yesterday we disbursed 25 billion Kenyan shillings to the counties. And we have given money up to November. We are now looking for resources before the end of the month to give the allocation for December. So we are well on track, and there's no really any justification for either health workers or any other workers to go on strike, because this normal budget planning process. We give money based on priorities, but we also give money as timely as we get it.
Your Excellency, your task is not an easy one, we understand. We know it's actually difficult. And even when we ask you these questions, it isn't from a position of assuming it is simple. We know it is difficult, but just so that we can seek clarity. When you say money is disbursed, what does that mean? When you say money isn't drawn, what does that mean? Because as a layman, I assume when you say you give me money, the money is available. All I do is pick it and put it in my pocket.
And use it.
When it comes to giving money to the counties, Is it really that simple and straightforward, or are there certain conditions that must be met, or are there certain processes that must be followed? Because we've heard this story of your ministry saying there's money available and the governor's telling us something completely different. So this is why we raise this question. How is this money processed? Can they just access it as easily as I'm saying it, or are there conditions that they must meet which they don't meet?
I think that clarification is very important. We know every year we do a budget, counties do their own budget, and the budget approval is not done by Treasury, but is done by the controller of budget. Having satisfied the necessary parameters on what amount goes to recurrent expenditure, how much goes for salary, how much has been set aside for development, is because desirable that counties at least have a minimum of 30% earmarked for development. Because some counties also expend too much on recurrence while they have really no money for development, and that's not the purpose as to why devolution, came up in our constitution. Having done the budget, it is now between them and the controller of budget, and normally every year, every month, they make an exchequer requisition, meaning you have the budget, but you do not have the cash. The cash comes from National Treasury. It comes through the controller of budget. The controller of budget is satisfied that the request meets the criteria, and then it's sent to us. Having done that, then we now release exchequer to the counties, but we release it to the controller of budget. The controller now sends it to the Central Bank of Kenya, and now each of the counties have their own account in Central Bank. So what I was saying that before now you ask for money from the Treasury through the controller of budget. If you have money just sitting idle in your own respective account in the Central Bank, you also struggle to spend this money. There's no reason as to why you should be holding huge, account balance when here on this side we now have competing needs for these resources to support the ministries, to support the county, to even incur other expenditure, including pension and the rest. That does not necessarily mean they are really constrained to a level that we can't pay. But we are telling them you also spend because the budget is the desire is to realize development and better lives for Kenyan people. But money is sitting in the account does not necessarily translate into those aspirations.
You sit in this position, Bona CS, where you have been governor and now you are the CS of the National Treasury. The response that the governors gave to that statement was that, yes, we have already committed some of this money. The only thing is that we haven't gotten to the point of paying out for these development projects. It's committed in the budget. The development project is already on the ground, but we haven't just gotten to the point of paying. The second thing is because they cannot also tell when money will be available in their account, they only deal with money after it has already hit the account. That's when they start, looking at, so the money has come in. We're paying this for recurrent expenditure. This for development has already been committed. Do we pay it out right now? Did you experience that kind of scenario when you were governor yourself, where money would come in, but you were not able to expend that money within the 30 days before the next tranche of money comes in?
And Governor, if I can add on to that question, this appears to be almost a micromanaging of the counties. And it would be interesting to hear, your perspective. Is this what the Constitution anticipated? Is this what's anticipated in the law? Is a county able to plan under these circumstances and to fulfill its objectives when really it appears like a exercise of micromanagement?
Let me tell you, in our constitution and also the PFM, the Treasury has a role in all matters of financial management. Our role, the context that I put, that the county spend money in the accounts at Central Bank was advisory. You are telling them spend your money and spend it faster, you spend it for the intended purpose, for the common good of the people. That is basically advisory. That does not mean that you are going to interfere or stop their monthly disbursement. And to that effect, that's what I was telling you, that yesterday alone, we had disbursed 25 billion Kenyan shillings to the counties as shares as their monthly share. Even before the end of the month, we will also try, based on the priorities that we have here, to disburse them more resources. And so the county will not have any reason as to why maybe they're having challenges. In that does not mean that we are micromanaging counties in any way. We are only giving an advisory because the law empowers us, the Constitution empowers Treasury to give guidance from time to time on all matters of financial management. But also importantly, I also need to tell you that we also have cases where there are challenges within national government and also the county government in managing expenditure. We have seen cases where people procure services and goods, but at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when Treasury has released money for the payment of that particular purpose, you end up not paying. You accumulate so much pending bills and cross into the next financial year. And to some extent, have people, some traders, many traders, particularly at the local level, many of them are not paid for services they have rendered, goods they have delivered over a period of time. That's not good financial management. Last year alone, counties were owed by individual traders the tune of 85 billion Kenyan shillings. And national government also close to 30 billion. We have pushed the national government, we paid most of the pending bills. The county governments, we also gave advisory, we told them to pay. Many of them paid, but still the substantial amount that has not been paid. So it's our responsibility as National Treasury to intervene in a situation where there's outright, either malpractices or diversion from good financial management.
Bonasias, could I ask about another of the important pillars of public finance management, which falls on your office, which is the implementation of Article 201 on accountability, transparency, and public participation. And first of all, acknowledge the great strides the Treasury has made in publishing budget information, including the register. But you'll note, for instance, we are looking at today's paper where we see that there are still gaps in the information in the register. There is lack of detail that means that this register is not really meeting the standard of accountability in terms of maybe the purposes of the loans, some of the payments, the cumulative payments are not there. So there's ambiguities, there's omissions, there's gaps in the debt register. The debt register is also not up to date. So this as we reflected on this earlier, we say that first of all, if we're going to find corruption in debt, it's going to be in the register. So if there's lack of information there, are you then not obscuring the process of accountability by putting out a debt register that hasn't met the standard? And then linked to that, the IMF has called for a comprehensive independent audit of the register and of these loans. Are you taking measures to do that? And if so, what are they? The last point is public participation, public engagement, CSO engagement with the Treasury has been very low, almost non-existent. What steps are you going to take to increase accountability, participation, structured engagement with civil society for the purposes of accountability to ensure we uphold these principles? So Bonasias, those are many questions, but we really need to hear from you with regard to Article 201. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much once again. I think you've openly stated that public participation is obligatory, is in our constitution, is in our various laws. And to our best of knowledge, we've engaged public at all levels. We have an open website. We engage as a process, the process of budget making. It goes through several stages, and at every stage, the public is given an opportunity. And there have also been a number of changes to the budget proposals that we have as a result of getting input. All these professional bodies, the accountants body, the law society, everyone are given opportunity. And whatever we do here is in public. And the Constitution also gives you right. If you are not happy with the content of the death register, you can request. The law empowers you, and we are obligated to provide you. So I'm not sure if there is anything that the Treasury is hiding. Everything is the public, everything, because the law gives you that opportunity. And it's also important to realize that we don't operate alone. We are guided by international standards. We are members of IMF, World Bank, and some situations, we engage them, they engage us, and everything we are doing in the open. At the moment, it's also important to realize that on our own request, we've engaged World Bank, IMF, to work with us on reforming some of our state enterprises, on working out on policies and programs to support us in making sure that we remain on the trajectory of financial prudence that we've given ourselves. So that we do not just spend, but we spend based on an agreement and checks that we've given ourselves. So I want to assure you that Treasury will remain open, and if there's any additional information which you think has not been provided, you are most welcome to come and call on us, come and call on the Cabinet Secretary, and we'll provide it to you. We have no intention or no reason to hide any information, which is for the betterment and actually is a right for public to get access to.
And Bonasias, on the issue of the audit, the call for a comprehensive audit, independent comprehensive audit, and the issue of structured engagement with civil society in these regards. Because yes, there are gaps, and several civil society have gone to court actually, asking prior to the publishing of the register, asking for contracts to get that information, and it's possible there'll be more. But structured engagement would preempt that. So are you saying you're happy with the quality and standard? Do you acknowledge there may be some gaps in terms of the information in the debt register? And what are the plans for a comprehensive independent audit? Because as the previous Auditor General said, corruption is being budgeted, is being put into the budget. And corruption in debt is actually hiding in this register. So this audit is very important so that Kenyans get accountability. So the question to you is, are you happy with this register? Are you going to call for the comprehensive independent audit? Are you going to work in a structured way with civil society, or is it up to us now to go to court and to issue more access to information requests? So what's your agenda in terms of ensuring prudent use of this money, Bonasias?
Let me assure you that it's misplaced that the allegation that corruption is budgeted for. That's not true. It can never be true. Nobody can do that. Because we are a country that believes in law. We are a country leadership that goes to election after every 5 years. And they are based on policies and programs. And based on this, they are audited after politically at the end of every 5 years. You will also need to realize that we have institutions that have been empowered by the Constitution to audit government and public expenditure. This is the Auditor General. It's an independent office, well-resourced, and their reports are done timely, and they have done it very well. We have institutions that we elected ourselves, the Parliament, that act as another, institutions that put checks on government. And at the same time, we have also many other institutions outside this framework, outside the Auditor General, outside the Parliament through the Accounts Committee, through the Public Investment Committee, through any committees of Parliament. This information can be sought, can be provided, and they are usually provided without any hesitation. Should the now civil society feel this information is not adequate, they are also obligated now, they have every right to ask for additional information as and when required. If all this now fails, we also have the judiciary, the independence of judiciary that can compel anyone, including the National Treasury, to provide whatever information that you would so desire. Beyond these, there are also institutions that have been set up by government, including the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, the EACC, the Office of Director of Public Prosecution. All these institutions have been set up by this country, by the population of this country
Bonasias, sorry to
to
cut
act as a
in.
check.
Sorry to
But
cut
I just
in.
want to assure you,
Sorry to cut
I want
in.
to assure you,
The issue of, you still haven't answered the issue. Are you intending to undertake structured engagement with civil society? And are you intending to have a comprehensive audit of the debt register, and to do so in a manner that is participatory? And are you also telling us that there is no corruption in debt management in Kenya? That are you happy with all the procurement processes around the debt that we have?
let me assure you, I have said before and I'll say it now, we have nothing to hide. Everything is in public. The law compels us to make it public. We send the register to Parliament in detail. The loans that have been procured 1963 to date are all in the debt register. If there's any other matter outside the debt register, then that can never be the loan for this country. But if you have any, please bring it forth. We have no reason to give, half information. We are available and ready. If you want to raise any matter, either as a civil society or as a Kenyan public on the street, you are most welcome to put us to task and inquire more. But regarding corruption, let me tell you, corruption in this society is not only domiciled in the public sector, it's heavily in the private sector, and even heavily domiciled in the civil, among the civil society. But because we are creation of this country, and the society transcends both public, private, and civil society, and you are most welcome. We are together. Tell us what needs to be fixed. I cannot say that there's corruption here when I have no evidence. We can be put to task.
Okay.
I do not just want to work on hearsay or assumptions that the fact that, this is a law, there's a hidden cause of corruption. There's nothing like that.
Okay. Ambassador Okudiatani.
Procuring loan is a big process. The process comes to Treasury towards the tail end. First, you have a desire to undertake certain projects, either in roads or Ministry of Water or anywhere. Engagement is done at that level. A lot of visits, a lot of independent institutions audited. By the time it comes to, for commercial close at the National Treasury, the Attorney General will have, convinced himself that the loan is good for the country. It has met all the necessary laws. And then here, that's the time we now sign the financial agreement. The implementation part of it, if there are challenges, is going to now undertake the necessary process of government, the auditing processes. But, every ministry has an internal audit unit. There is an auditor general that's independent that does this on this stage. And at a given time, we also have a controller budget that have to be satisfied that money cannot be withdrawn unless that office is fully convinced that it's meant for the right purpose and can be stopped at any level. There are also institutions in Parliament that have a direct role of supervising, those ministries, working with them and confirming that, the expenditure are within limit, the expenditure are for the intended purpose, and if there are any likelihood or if there is any indications of corruption, can be handled at very many levels.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much for your conversation with us this morning. Unfortunately, running out of time because we've got to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. We've been live on KTN Home from 7 now to coming up to 9 o'clock. We've been having a conversation with the CS for the National Treasury and Planning, Ambassador Okudiatani, who's just celebrated 1 year in office. Tough work for him. We wish you all the best as you continue in this work of serving the public and serving the nation. Asante sana.
Thank you very much and bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Keep it right here for more conversations on Spice FM. Spice FM is on 94.4 in Nairobi. It's in Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We're also online on Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Thank you to our audience on KTN Home. Join us again tomorrow from 7 o'clock. But the conversations continue on Spice FM in the next hour. So in the next hour, we digest what we've heard from the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and then bring the conversation now from not just national debt, but personal debt. How well are people managing their own debts? Okay. If we want the government to manage the debt very well, are we also able to manage our own personal debt? Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
94.4 Spice FM.
Okay, looking at
Nairobi.
Langata Road this morning, there's heavy traffic from Galleria into town. This is from the turnoff of Magadi Road and then out towards the CBD. Very, very slow this morning. Then as you get down and approach the Timor roundabout, there's the option of going Bagadi Way. Or if you want to stick to Langata Road, join Nyeri Stadium, you're going to get stuck again on Huru Highway as you get into the CBD. So traffic is starting to stave off on Thika Road. There's a jam though right at the Pangani underpass, and that is not moving. Coming out of Westlands, there we see it's very slow. Out of Nairobi, there's still that issue on the Mombasa Malindi highway. Use Nyali links if you can, so that you don't get stuck in that. Okay, so around the country there seems to be some traffic. Nakuru is looking good, getting in and out of the town this morning, not too terrible. As is Kisumu going towards the airport. Oboti Road is looking clear. Talk to us later. Spice from KE through the day if you need to. If you're stuck anywhere, you find a good route, let us know that as well.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
And it continues into the next final hour of the show. In the room as well as Eric Latif, Ndu Okwan, C.T. Muga is Wanjiru Gikonyo, our guest host today. Some quite sharp reaction coming in on the interview we've just had with Ambassador Ukuri, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary. And joining us on the line is Kisumu Town East MP, Honorable Shakil Shabir. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning. I've been on the Finance Committee now for nearly 3 terms.
Right.
And I want to tell you very clearly that, to be polite, the CS is misleading us.
Okay.
I have never seen a debt register in Parliament, never been given to us. The only thing that's been given to us is a sheet of paper, which has half of it is empty, and it is totally incoherent. Then the other issue is that I have been personally asking the CS, even when he asked for the first increase in the debt ceiling, he promised me in Parliament that the debt management unit will now be autonomous. The debt management unit, let me assure you, is an office, a small office, hidden in a corner somewhere. They have no autonomy whatsoever. The way, I'm a chartered accountant. They hide information of what is called contingent liabilities. They hide a lot of information. In Mozambique, the same thing happened. In certain other countries, the same thing has happened. I am very, very disappointed, and I expected Ambassador, the current CS, to be more honest with us. He is becoming as dishonest as the last lot of people who were there. There seems to be a cartel of mafia at the Treasury. And
Can I ask you a question, sir, if I may?
Yes.
Does the CS have the powers to do these very same things that you have said it very, very clearly that he should do?
But he's the chief. Look, this is a Treasury.
I'm asking a simple question because decision making, we know, for instance, let me take the discussion to higher office. We know the president is in charge of the country. Now, when you're the president complaining that there's 2 billion shillings being stolen from the country every day, he's the president. I am asking this because somebody may be in a position and constitutionally there are powers which the office has, but is he able to implement these powers?
Look, you see, you do the little you can.
Yep.
I want to first go to the CS. We're talking about debt management. Now, the debt management unit is very much a branch, very much a unit in his control. Now, we already agreed that the debt management unit should be autonomous. The first thing he can do is to facilitate the debt management unit. We have some very, very intelligent and very good people in Treasury. You know, our civil servants are great people. They are frustrated and they are pushed under. So if you go to the Treasury, and we, the Finance Committee, asked the CS to take us to the debt management unit and let us see with our eyes. You know, he doesn't allow us to go there.
From your reading,
Mheshimiwa,
this is a question that has been raised not once, not twice, having an independent public debt management unit.
That's correct.
Why is it that this doesn't happen? Who is the stumbling block?
Because they are hiding this. You see, this thing is being hidden. We need clarity. I'm not saying that I'm just saying that the current CS may have been honest, may want to do this, but there's so much which is hidden. Now that they're now that the World Bank and IMF are asking countries to do an internal audit, a forensic audit, before they give any further debt.
Yep.
You are going to find 9 trillion is a joke. We will be at 12 trillion, the actual figure. Then the other thing is, I want to say this.
Yeah.
I'm also the chair of the African Parliamentarians Against Corruption. Recently, when the tax laws came to Parliament, do you know that the members of Parliament who voted, were given something, given some inducement?
Oh,
and
we're hearing this now.
The CS, he mentioned it. Oh, don't worry, we're taking care of you. They went.
What?
Was this direct inducement to a person or money coming in through CDF and other support?
No, direct inducement to the members who voted.
Right.
I'm talking to you on the radio because I'm expecting somebody will sue me, and I'm ready for it. Do you see? But the thing is, now we know who went to the majority leader's office. We know who went to the minority leader's office, and they took 50,000 shillings each.
What was the
Now
issue
we are
under
asking,
discussion, Mheshimiwa?
What were they being induced to decide?
The tax laws, you know, many of us we were going to shoot down those tax laws because they're hitting the 190. We were induced. Luckily I was not here, but I have number of parliamentarians. They asked me, we were told to go and get something. We did not know what for.
Mheshimiwa, induced by who?
Well, who gave the money? Who wanted that tax laws passed?
Let me ask this. Whenever we hear of such games being played in Parliament, there's always one member who will come out and say, come on, but it has happened and I've seen it happen. And we always ask ourselves, so the ones who don't take the money and they don't say anything, they don't launch any official complaint, there is no record of them saying that this has happened and it is wrong. Are you any different from those that took the money if you just keep quiet?
This is the second or the third time. This is the second or third time I've said this, and I said it once. If you look at your handset, or even look at once I even went on television to say this when when this was in the 10th Parliament. I'm the chairman of the Parliamentarians Against Corruption.
Yeah.
I have appealed to the president to speak to us. We are legislators. You see, the thing is, it's all very nice for the president to say so much billions are going to corruption. But when we now come to the actual facts of what we have to do about it, we sort of shy away.
Yep.
We shy away. I mean, the president might be very anxious. He might be very genuine, and I've sat next to him and I've seen in his eyes. But when it comes to the actual action, there is nothing.
Because it's a puppet.
Nothing happened.
I want to ask you a question, Mheshimiwa Shakil Shabir. So you've sat in the Finance Committee of the National Assembly for 3 consecutive.
Yes, that's right.
Consecutive terms. And
That's
during
right.
this time, you keep raising questions with the National Treasury whenever it's coming up with the budget or supplementary budget
Yes.
on various
Absolutely.
issues, even on debt.
Yes. Yes.
Why is it that it appears the National Treasury has absolutely no powers when it comes to holding the Parliament has no powers when it comes to holding the National Treasury to account?
Because we are outvoted by our, the thing is, the whole thing it works in a sort of a cliquing system, because maybe 3 of us or 5 of us in a committee, 3 of us, we were shouted down, we want to note our objection, which we do, but it never comes through.
So what's the way forward? How do we resolve that?
The way forward is to continue and to ask the members of parliament to be genuine and the next time it comes up, and the next time it comes up now, we want to make sure that the debt management unit, the debt register is properly disclosed to us. All details, all columns must be complete.
Are there enough of you? Are there enough of you who are on this side of the divide?
There are not.
Because there are
Unfortunately,
clearly those who, according to what you're saying this morning, who are ready to take a pretty penny to vote in the opposite direction. Are there enough of you who are saying, look, we cannot allow this to continue, and we are going to try as much as possible to keep voting in this manner to stop this kind of thing? Is that possible?
Not enough of us. There are not enough of us, but we are hoping, like the Nobel Peace Prize winner Ugari Mathai said, every little bit helps.
You'll be the hummingbird.
There's a question I want to ask you. There's a country on this planet, the US. They found a way of legitimizing bribery. They call it lobbying. It's an acceptable practice, and if we legislated bribery in this way and we also created a legal framework on which lobbying could actually function, would it then be okay for Waheshimiwa to receive inducements to change their minds about decision-making in Parliament?
No, you see, lobbying is a different character.
Really? How exactly is it different?
The lobby comes with a structure. They are lobbying you, here you're told very clearly, my friend. Yeah.
Yes, but at the end of it, what are you doing? You're peddling influence.
But
of
in
course.
a transparent way.
Precisely.
But in a way,
so that's why I said if we legitimize it by legislating it, would it then be okay? This is why I'm asking.
But that's different from taking an envelope.
It's not different.
$50K in the bathroom.
It is
It is completely different because you have to be accountable for the decision.
Not even in the bathroom, in the offices. Yes.
Honorable Shakil Shabir, thank you very much for calling in this morning and for sharing with us what you're saying. We'll be calling you actually for a longer conversation on this, because you've got very many questions about what happens in the National Assembly.
I would be very, very keen to be on that. Thank you.
Asante sana. Have a good day. Let's take a break now at 13 minutes past 9. Take a look at the weather, and then you come back into the conversations. We'll be speaking with 2 people who run the business of auctioneers. Okay? One is from the Nairobi Connection Services Auctioneers, and the other one is a director of Legal Auctioneering Services. Okay. Now, if they've gotten in touch with you, just keep it right here because you'll hear from them shortly. Good morning. It's 14 minutes after 9.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay. Nairobi, this morning. It's partly sunny, 17 degrees at the moment. We're going to highs of 24 today and lows of 17. It's partly sunny in Nyeri at 17, highs of 25 and lows of 11. 19 degrees and cloudy in Nakuru, highs of 28 and lows of 12. 12 will also be the low in Eldoret, which is partly cloudy at 19. 19 and of course also cloudy in Kisumu, highs of 27. 19 again in Kakamega, highs of 30 and lows of 14. Cloudy conditions there. It's partly sunny in Mombasa at 26, highs of 34 and lows of 24. 32 will be the high in Malindi, where it's partly sunny at 26. Light rain still continues to fall in Kampala at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 18. Where it's sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, we'll see highs of 33 and coming back down to lows of 26. Sunny conditions in Johannesburg, 18 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 15. We're looking at haze still over Lagos, 26 at the moment, highs of 33 and lows of 23. Clear conditions in Kinshasa at 22. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 24. It's cooling down even more in Beijing. Now at -2, there will be lows of -8 and lows of just above 0 at 2. It's raining in Paris at 7, highs of 12. We're looking at highs of 11. Cloudy conditions in London at 10. And in New York, getting into Inauguration Wednesday, it's clear at 3. We'll see highs of 6 and a low of 0.
Spice and everything nice. Spice and Fit.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
In the Situation Room, you have Eric Latif, Nduo Ko, CT Muga, and Wenjiru Gikonyo. So, COVID-19 and what has happened to COVID-19 in the country, we have seen, people losing their jobs, livelihoods being impacted, some businesses thriving. If you talk about the telecoms industry, if you talk about the digital commerce industries, thriving. Another business line that thrived is insurance companies, especially when you talk about the medical side of insurance companies. They reported that because there were no claims, they made money. The others who made money possibly are auctioneers, because then they got hired by their clients, who are the financial institutions, to go get what is owed to the financial institutions from those that owe the financial institutions. But then that raises the issue, and we have had this conversation a number of times. When you look at the back pages of the newspapers nowadays, you will always find 3 or 4 adverts placed by auctioneers talking about some auction that's happening here or there. Others is because of that kind of debt stress, and people are ending up in that situation. So what is it that has happened that causes people to get to that point where they're being auctioned? How can you manage that whole process? We had callers who were calling us at some point last year, and CT were talking to them, and people were calling and saying, look, I have been called by an auctioneer. I have written to the bank and I've told them this is the situation that I am in, and I'd like us to have a conversation. And I assume that we're already starting to have a conversation. The next thing, I'm getting a call from an auctioneer telling me, now I've been given your number by the bank, they want their money. How do you manage all these situations?
It's an interesting situation because, you see, when you looked into this and you talked about it, you realize that, well, there's a department within the bank that deals with these things. And behind every department, there are individuals. So you will find that there are individuals who push the agenda. Because it's their job, really. Remember, there are letters that you receive. If you've ever borrowed money from the bank, it's like there are people who are given specific training for writing letters for those who owe the bank money and who haven't complied. They are rude letters. I think the purpose, they are intended to scare the living daylights out of you. So that you actually even stop thinking clearly about something that you could actually easily develop. Now, in panic mode, you are bound to do something quite silly.
Or make promises that you can't
Forget promises.
fulfill.
Try to go into hiding or try to avoid responding to whatever it is that they are writing.
The psychology of coercion.
Yes, so
and intimidation.
It's not far from the truth, though.
Yes, and you wonder that, yes, it's an intended purpose. But remember, by the time the bank lends money, there's a relationship you have with them. Now, banks, because of COVID, have changed dramatically and positively in many ways because the channels of communication have been opened up more and more and more. Some that should have been done a long time ago. But there are still people who've held on to those old practices where the moment you owe money, you get the impression you're being treated like an enemy. And yet you're actually not.
Suddenly you become...
Yes, and with COVID, the reason why people aren't paying, it's real. The same insurance companies are reporting that they have had a drop in people who've been paying premiums that they owe for whatever policies
Product
they may
they
have
take
had.
out.
One. Two, there are people who are now taking a loss into what they hope to get at the end of the day from the insurance companies, cutting their losses because they need their money now.
Yeah.
There is a reality that had hitherto never been experienced. But that change of circumstances, unfortunately, is not corresponded to by the change in thinking with certain parts of certain institutions within our
So
country.
the banks, then they have that attitude. And then there are these people who they're customer service trained, but their customer service training is on the other side.
Yes, it is.
Is instead of calling you to
get the
tell you, how
money.
can I help you? They call you to tell you, wewe, nimepewa number, unalipa lini?
No. So someone who owes the money, how do you think they're going to respond? They will be defensive.
Let's hear
In
the
your view,
experiences
how-
of those who run these businesses. Ian Otieno is from the Nairobi Connection Services Auctioneers, and Benjamin Silla is the Director of Legacy Auctioneering Services. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the Situation Room. I'm going to just start with you, Ian. Why are auctioneers so rude?
Okay, it depends. You see, sometimes also dealing with other clients. You see, for me, it's not my money that I'm going after. I'm under instructions to get this money on behalf of a certain institution. So I'll basically call up somebody, give him the details, and also basically let us know they owe. The best they can do is just try comply. Because my issue is I'm under instructions. It's not that something I'm going after. That's mine. I'm under instructions. So basically I've been contracted by a certain institution to come, recollect or recover some certain amount that they gave out. And also most of the clients give out collateral.
Yeah.
Yes. So you see, basically, it's not being rude. It's basically a way of trying. Okay, some clients forget. I've been in this business for like 10 years. Some clients forget. Actually, there are some who are actually really rich. They forget to pay. And others are just rude enough not to even want to even consider that they owe money.
By the time somebody comes to you, and when it comes to auction, obviously there have been some reminders to the client to pay and they haven't paid. What is your success rate in terms of the number of clients who will eventually pay, and what strategies do you then use to ensure the highest percentage will pay? Because that's where you also earn your commission, I imagine.
Yes, that's where we are now, commission. But basically, most of the work has become easier because most of the clients usually give out security, basically in either real estate or logbook loans. So basically, like institutions, like most of my microfinances nowadays, you have to give me your logbook for me to give you some money, and also I'll make sure I'll leave you with the commodity itself, like the car, for instance. I'll leave you with the car, and I'll have your logbook, but I've installed a tracking gadget on the car. So basically, when you default, you'll be sent a demand letter, be told so and so you owe this much. Please, your arrears are due. Kindly try communicate to us or pay. Some will be rude enough not to even want to consider. Then that's where we come in. So like in terms of our success rate, mostly it's easier nowadays because of technology and stuff. So I'd basically say like 80%.
80% is quite high.
What's the end goal here? To have a conversation with people so that they are being honest with you in terms of what their situation is, or is the end goal to be able to get what you can get in terms of payment?
Okay, it depends. You see, some with certain issues like real estate. During COVID season, everybody has been in a tough spot. That much we understand. We're also human beings as well. So most of the institutions gave out waivers into such kind of, because of COVID basically. But now, at the end rate, we're always usually supposed to get back to recover on behalf of the company because we're under instructions. Anything else negotiable is the company that can decide, not us. Because us guys are under instructions from the company.
Benjamin, let's bring you in here as well. So Your client here is the person who is owed money. And as Ian is explaining, the client has given you instructions. What I want you to do is recover my debt. And here is the collateral that this person had placed when they were taking the loan. Don't you have any leeway to go and negotiate and see? So the best thing, what my client wants is to get their money repaid, not to have this title deed or the logbook or the house or the gas cooker. They want their money back. Don't you have that leeway of working out to ensure that you can work with the person that you've been sent to so they can repay and not necessarily collect their take the collateral?
Thank you very much. I think first of all, let me start by saying that the issue of the auctioneer has been ruled. I think that's wrong thing saying that. I think everything depends on how the debt has been approached. And I think when they approach well, I don't think there's much problem. On that issue about the issue of the negotiation part of it, when you get the instructions, definitely you normally notify the debtors that your property is going to be sold. Like when you're selling a property, before you put the paper, there's a 45-day notice to the debtors. And we normally tell them that by this time, this property is going to be sold. So obviously, we expect the debtors, before we auction or before we attach these things or before we put them in the newspaper, they have that time to go and negotiate with the people they took the money from. Normally, the auctioneer cannot really negotiate for the banks because the debtor is the one who took the money from the bank. So what we do, we only serve the notices to them, and during that period of the notice, we expect the debtors to go negotiate with the bank. And if at all they don't have a way through, that is only when we proceed and sell. For the auctioneer, he doesn't have power to negotiate on behalf of the debtor.
When you say you don't have powers, so what powers do you have apart from obeying the instructions of your client?
What we normally do is we serve the notices to the debtors.
Yes.
Notifying the debtors that this is the action. This is what is going to take place, but all this debt is not paid. If it is a bank loan or a property, you serve the normal notices to the debtor, notifying them that within this period of time, you have time to negotiate, you have time to maybe sell a property, you have time to go back before the actual part of the selling takes place. So normally when we negotiate and this debt has been given by another party altogether, normally the law doesn't allow. So what we do as we notify you before telling you that these are the actions the bank has waited for so long and this is what is going to take place.
People are afraid of you. You know this, right? When they hear the word in terms of the title of what you do, folks are afraid of you to even begin to have a conversation. Is that what you want people to feel when you're essentially coming for them? Or are you still coming from a place where you want to negotiate? By the time you're having a conversation with them, they feel threatened. Is this how they should feel?
No. It's not supposed to be that way. Because normally, if at all I would go to somebody, I would normally introduce myself and tell him I'm here because of a purpose. And I'll tell them that we have been sent by A, B, C, E, D financial institution. They need their money. It's long overdue. And we are here just notify you that because this was a security against their money, the best thing is either you look for cessation of paying or go renegotiate with them and see the best thing can be done. The issue of being afraid, I don't know why people would be afraid when the person coming to us we are in a position of communicating with them.
I think I will explain to you why people are afraid. Because we see in the papers, we read, we are told. By the time, not all auctioneers, some auctioneers arrive at your doorstep. First of all, they arrive with hoodlums, okay? And there isn't much discussion or talking. They simply come in, and before you know, your property is actually being carted out. And it seems like they prefer something like the middle of the day on a weekend when all your neighbors are there.
And the children.
And the children are there, so that you can enjoy the full benefits of embarrassment. Yes.
Not really. I don't think the auctioneer's goal is to embarrass any other person. Because generally, this is not his thing. Even the auctioneer doing that job, those things don't belong to him.
So how do you think auctioneers acquire this reputation? I mean, I myself have had experience with auctioneers, but they're very pleasant people, just as you're discussing. And they came to tell me, this business of yours, this money that you owe, this is what the bank says. Very pleasant. But why I ask if they have leeway, I had experience with an auctioneer telling me, look, this is what I advise you to do. All right?
Yeah.
And they gave me advice. Do this, do the other. You can slow down this process, etc., etc., etc. So my experience with auctioneers was a pleasant one. But I am in the minority. I'm actually an exception here. Most people tell you horror stories.
No, I think what we are trying to do is, I think before there was no rules, there was no acts. Right now we have a procedure of doing things. We have notices which we serve the debtors, communicate to them, and I believe we are making it just as a business like any other, so that it's not perceived that an auctioneer is a bad business.
Benjamin, how long have you been in this business?
I've been here for about 20 years.
Right, and Ian's been in it for 10. Do you have, how is business? Is it going up, going down?
No, let me say this. When the economy is bad, people perceive to say the auctioneers have a lot of work. It's true, yes, you can have a lot of work. But the aim of the auctioneer is not just attaching items or advertising items in the newspaper. The aim is to recover the money. But when there is no money in the economy, even if I have a lot of vehicles in the store, even if I have a lot of properties in the newspaper, and the buyers are not there, how do I earn? I don't earn any commission. I don't get my commission in full. But when I succeed in selling, is when I earn. So when the economy is bad, it's bad for everybody, not also for the auctioneers, because they'll incur a lot of money before they get back their money.
I see.
So Ian, is it bad right now in terms of...
It's not good. It's not good at all. We do a lot of repairs in newspapers. It's not good at all. Because the buyers are less.
Right.
It's not good at all. So we cannot say that because the economy is bad, the auctioneer is having a good time. Because how does he get his money?
If you want auctioneers, we'd sympathize with you, but we're not sure. Most people are thinking.
But Benjamin, I have to ask
too
this.
bad.
I have to ask this question: in a changing financial environment, in a changing economic environment, your industry, the industry you belong to, what changes have you made to be compliant with these particular changes? Because at the end of the day, you rely on people to default on their loans for you to be in business. You rely on people to not meet the obligations for you to be in business. It's an understandable business and a necessary one, I believe. But how have you changed to meet the demands of the time?
Okay, generally, as we are governed by an act of parliament, so unless there are changes in that act of like giving more time or more negotiation, that one can be done. But for us, we can't change much. We can't change so much. What matters is the principle.
Do you have an association? How old is the act, and what efforts are there to ensure that your clients understand their rights under the act? Because people are afraid because they don't know their rights. They know they need to pay, but they don't know if they have any rights or what to expect from auctioneers.
Right. We have an association, National Association of Kenya Auctioneers, which is an association of all auctioneers. We have the Auctioneers Licensing Board, which license auctioneers and also discipline auctioneers when they go wrong. Normally, it's good for the clients to know their rights. That if a total auctioneer comes to me, what is he supposed to do? Identify himself. He needs to have a badge. He needs to be courteous. Yes. He needs to show me the instructions that brought him there. He needs to give me the relevant notices, which are there in the Act, in the Auctioneers Act, and which of those papers will be the fees to be paid and how it's supposed to be done. So I think what is happening is maybe the public is not aware of what is their right on when an auctioneer comes, when he's rude, those kind of things.
So he's supposed to have some form of identification. Is he allowed to come with thugs?
No, he's not supposed to come with thugs. nowhere.
He just comes with workers.
He comes with workers who look like thugs.
No, just look, behave.
Behave like.
Benjamin, this is what's happening.
I think that that notion has always been perceived in the wrong way. I think I know there are cases, exceptional cases.
I'm hard pressed to find Benjamin, an auctioneer, who comes to people and says, "Shall we sit down and have a cup of tea and let's discuss this thing?" I mean, that's not exactly the approach that's taken.
And it's not their brief either, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
their brief is
But if you have a brief, does it mean it precludes, it stops you from thinking?
What we are doing currently, the associations and auctioneers licensing board, they have been doing a lot of, let's say, a lot of seminars, a lot of workshops for the auctioneers, addressing those issues which the public look at us in a negative way. Maybe doing more training, more workshops for them, and that's what we are doing, right? So that at least this business can be done in the right way.
Ian, I want to ask you this question. When we started the questions, both of you are saying that sometimes the financial institution will reach out to somebody, and somebody may be rude enough not to respond, and then the auctioneer then is brought in, and when the auctioneer also reaches out to this data, the person is still rude enough not to respond. So just give us your experience in the last 1 year in terms of, you know, the jobs that you've had to take and the kind of attitude that you get from people. Is it because of lack of understanding of what they can do, or is it just that outright rudeness of "I don't want to pay, silipi na silipi"?
I think one is lack of understanding.
Right.
One is lack of understanding. The other issue, silipi, I don't see why you should say you'll not pay a debt which has been given to you, unless you just don't want to pay. And when your things are being taken, that's the time you say that the auctioneer has done something wrong. And when you go deep and look at it deeply, you'll find that the debtor is always wrong. He has not fulfilled his obligation.
Okay.
Can I put
maybe my brother can answer on the other side here.
Can I just add to that question to both of you?
Right.
We've seen the proliferation of a lot of lending institutions. Some operate like Shylocks, some are maybe more structured.
Shylocks.
Yes, so we are seeing, more institutions lending on very punitive terms, maybe without full disclosure, and almost targeting certain groups of people. What's your view as auctioneers? Do you think there is a problem in terms of the regulation of the lending side, and is this making your work easier or harder?
Basically, on my side, one thing I've realized over the past year, most of the clients, you see, each and every institution have terms and conditions that you have to sign before you get. So I'll blame most of it on ignorance, because you see, here is, let's for instance, here is me. I need some money really urgently. And there's this institution that has been advertised or I've seen on the newspaper that can give me money within the next 6-7 hours. So I'll rush to them. The certain documents they require for me, I'll give them. Then they'll tell me, go through these documents, then sign. So with that hastiness of the need or the urge of money, you just go into sign. But everything is always stipulated on that terms and condition sheet, because it will state if so and so date you don't pay, will come recover, send some people to come recover the current commodity that you've placed under security. And this is where the problem comes in, because when you approach a client, he'll be like, no, I never signed anything. And then you'll always have a copy on the ground to show this is what you signed, and this is the clause that stipulates this will happen when you don't do this.
So what proliferates this problem? Is it that need for quick money, and quick money then takes you to this person who will give you money within 24 hours or within even 5 hours? Or is it a picture of a larger problem, which is the issue of financial literacy?
Basically, I'd argue the fact that there's also been a financial problem. As a country, our economy is not as great. There's that issue. And there's also the need of the emergency needs, the logical bit of it. Because you see, you go for money with the rate and the rate and the urgency you need it for.
Yeah.
So basically, if I want money today to solve a certain problem, I'll have to go for those microfinances that give them within hours. Or if I'm patient enough, I want to do something get to build a flat, I'll be patient enough to wait for the time and get the necessary rates required. So for me, I think it's the lack of financial literacy mostly.
If you
the debtors fail to read those conditions very clearly when they're taking the money. They fail to see. They fail to look at it. If at all I don't pay, what will happen? And those are the questions they don't ask themselves. I take money. If at all I don't pay, what's the procedure?
But aren't you the beneficiary if I don't read, and if there are more and more institutions giving quick money to people who don't read? It sounds like your business then has been on an upsurge as more and more people borrow without reading the terms.
Let me say that what am I saying is not working well. It's because of the final issue is the sale. Is a sale. In an auction, the final issue is a sale, where the money is exchanged and a property is transferred to another person, or a vehicle is sold and somebody else pays. That is the final thing. So if at all, it's like now you see the auctioneers, they're full of vehicles. They're there. You go to the bank, they'll tell you all the vehicles are here.
Yep.
Why are they not being sold? It's because the market is bad. So how does the fair get the money?
So as an association, do you see a role that you need to play in, one, entrenching financial literacy, and number two, in making sure that there is better management and regulation from the lender side, that we have lenders then who are not actually targeting, just like Kanjiro was saying, they're not targeting a certain segment of people with the end goal of taking advantage of this? Benjamin.
Yeah, we have two associations currently. The National Association of Kenya Auctioneers. I think they have also they are leaders there, and also we have another association called the Kenya Tensa. I think Kenya that's something. Yeah, Tensa. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have a role. Yes, they have a role in trying to educate the public on how they work, and also the Auctioneer Licensing Board, which also regulates auctioneers. So which also needs also to tell the public on the procedure, and maybe even talk to the banks and the lenders on how they can also help each other to see that the debtors are not caught unaware. You know, some of the debtors usually say they're caught unaware, and normally when you go through the document which Marilla has just said, they have signed the same document. So I think more is training them or letting them know once they get to debt what is supposed to be done and what are the procedures of recovery.
We're having a conversation with two auctioneers, Ian Otieno from the Nairobi Connection Services Auctioneers and Benjamin Silla, Director Legacy Auctioneering Services. The issue here is personal debt, how to manage your personal debt, and also looking at the other side, the experiences that people have had with auctioneers at the point when auctioneers have been hired by the creditors to come and collect. What happens there, and then how do we improve the situation all around for everybody? 13 minutes now. How many minutes are those?
How many minutes to
17
10?
minutes to 10. Let's take a break, see what's happening on the roads, come in and then look at some of the questions that have been posed, and we ask our guests before we conclude the conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmstar, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, so unfortunately, Thika Road is a disaster this morning, guys. Trying to get into the CBD is not happening. There's something going on there. We're not quite sure what it is, but getting into town from Thika Road today, since morning, has been a mess. It got a little bit better, but now it's a problem, and this is what's featuring now this morning. Highway, service lane, everything not working. This is Thika Road. You have to keep an eye on what's going on there. Everything else seems to be slowing down in terms of traffic, getting better into the CBD and out. Of course, let us know through the day where you might be stuck. But for now, if you're on Thika Road, you're going to have to sit through this one. All right? Let us see what it looks like through the day. Spice of MKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
at 9:45. The conversation continues right here with Ian Otieno of Nairobi Connection Services Auctioneers and the Director of Legacy Auctioneering Services, Benjamin Sila. As we conclude this conversation with you two gentlemen, you hear, and this is not the first time that you're hearing this, there's an issue about perception of auctioneers. There's an issue about, how the public relates with auctioneers at all. And there's also the issue of people understanding what auctioneers do. As a parting shot to each of you, what would you like to tell the public about the business of auctioneers and about managing their own personal debt and dealing with their creditors? Start with you, Ian.
For me, I'll speak on behalf of the business of auctioneers. A lot of people assume that we are making money, but like every other business, you have to use money to make money. So basically, for us to even go to a point where we have to attach somebody's things, it means we have to use our money first, and they have to be sold. Or even the client has to come back. There's an option for the client to come pay after they clear and pay and get back their things. That's when we get paid. But basically for us, business is stagnant now because nothing is moving. The economy is bad. So we always have to go back into our pockets. So it's not as people usually think. It's a basic assumption, but now business is not really good as people think.
All right. Benjamin.
Let me say that, the business is not very good here because the economy is slow. But let me say maybe a lot of education needs to be done. Maybe forums where people can ask questions to auctioneers and tell them how you do your business. Can it be done a better way? Looking for ways of improvement. We have the associations, we have the licensing board, which licenses auctioneers, and I think about all those things are done so that people can really understand how does auctioneer come in? How does the auctioneer come in? How does he pass all the houses and come to my house? And also the issue of the agreements which they make with the money lenders. They need to go through them. The debtors need to really understand. They need to ask, but I don't pay. What are the remedies? What can be done to me? So that when the auctioneers come to them, it doesn't come like a surprise to them. And they say, why are you coming here? Those kind of things. I think a lot of education needs to be done to the public, and also maybe more forums where the public also can ask questions. How is the business done? And also raise issues when the auctioneers are wrong, so that we can know what is the problem there.
Hopefully we'll have more and more conversations with you gentlemen so that we can get to understand the business of auctioneers and also the relationship between you, your client, and your victim. So to speak. Benjamin Sila and Ian Otieno, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Well, I'll keep you right here. More conversations continue. So, by the time we're back tomorrow morning, America will have a new president. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are due to be sworn in later today as president and vice president. This event is not going to be attended by the public. It's a shout out from the public. One of the reasons is COVID-19. The other reasons include security. What's the latest that we know from Washington?
Okay, so, there is a lot of buzz right now in terms of the possibility of the insurrectionists pulling a move today at the inauguration, which takes place in about 8 hours or so, maybe about 10 hours or so from now. So two narratives are being shared here. COVID, usually you have a lot of people around the Washington Monument, all of this while the inauguration is taking place. Hundreds of thousands of Americans thronging to witness this. But this year is a special one in terms of trying to remove crowds at all because of COVID-19. At the same time, because of what we saw on January 6th, the attack on the Capitol and in Congress. So the question is it really to stop the spread of COVID-19, or really is it to make sure that any kind of security threat then is put at bay during the inauguration? Both of these things are coming out and ringing out clear, but regardless, the inauguration is still going to take place. We also know that there's been heightened security around the president-elect, there's been heightened security around the vice president-elect, and so many things going on now. Even as we speak, presidential pardons are taking place. It was long awaited in terms of what outgoing President Trump is going to do, who he's going to pardon. Some of those have already been announced. But yes, it will be the first kind of inauguration like this where the public will not attend. But it will take place. It will happen. And by tomorrow, yes, the United States will have another president, a new president.
In Joe Biden.
Yes.
What is Trump getting, as a parting shot? Like, is there a final tea, final lunch, final dinner that he's getting? Because we've seen the people who are not going to be attending that farewell of Donald Trump, including his own vice president, who's already jumped ship. So already at that point where Trump is completely isolated, now the attention focuses on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, as he was leaving Delaware, he spoke now for the last time, Delaware, and saying, thank you very much, the people of Delaware, for giving me this opportunity to serve as your senator for so many years. Now I have risen to the level of president now. And it was quite emotional at some point, even saying that he really misses his son, Beau Biden, whom he says he'd have wanted to see him there. Maybe Beau Biden had basically been viewed as the man who could have taken over from Joe Biden's political legacy. Very many things that are happening now in terms of even what is Biden going to do immediately. There's the confirmation hearings for his nominees into the cabinet, into other key positions. What do you read from all that? Is America now getting back into becoming great again?
My reading is, first of all, Joe Biden has been very deliberate in his messaging to message the issue of healing the rifts. I think that's going to continue. I think he's also been very deliberate in terms of messaging, managing. We're going to manage the hell out of this because he wants to stress that's what they're doing, just trying to change that perception. But also remember that America has a very high rate of assassination of political leaders. So yeah, I think it's going to remain tense. I think there were expectations around even Obama when they said, first black president, will he survive America? So security concerns, I think, are going to be part and parcel of this administration. But to answer your question on Donald Trump's final T, my hope it will be the Senate impeaching him so that he doesn't benefit from the trappings of the presidential, being an ex-president. So I hope that will happen, and the indications are it might.
Actually, it's only in 1901 that the systematic and deliberate protection of presidents was actually put in force. Statistics have it that 1 in every 4 presidents, there's an attempt on their lives. 1 in 9 are successful.
That's a very worrying statistic.
It is. So
they've had
if
45 presidents.
Yes, so if you're taking precautions now, it's with good reason. These are people who have a habit of killing their president.
Yeah. America is special. You know, all said and done, rhetoric and Hollywood and the bravado aside, what has impressed me with what has happened to America, of course, it's a wake-up call. They need to revisit very many issues. But I'm very impressed with how they fought back. They fought back against Trump and Trumpism. Like I was saying earlier, I'm extremely impressed with their ability, the work around flipping Republican states to win this presidency. But if you had ordinary people who were setting up groups and mobilizing, in their backyards, baking clubs and all of that. So I think for me, America, has a lot of internal reflections to take place, but they've also done well. That's my view. And I think we can borrow from that.
Your view is correct, because if you want to understand the all-round practicalization of freedoms, we saw the extremity in the negative represented almost wholeheartedly by President Trump. And then in the American people doing what they did, it also tells you what freedoms can be used for good and in evil. It's clear. It's evident. And here, it's a case where anything that doesn't seem to suit their purposes, they will change it.
Yeah. I think one of the difficult things with maybe they were talking about this cancel culture and the liberal discourse that has become almost fundamentalist, where I think there's a need for a discussion around the way right-wing and left-wing politics are perpetrated. Because I think it's not just the right-wing politics that are extremists. Extreme. They're all extreme. Yep. And there's need for that conversation. Yeah. And I think that would be good for all of us.
If you look at how nations evolved, I like calling it empires. This American civilization reached an apex quite a while back. Now, what, in my view, we are seeing is how this particular civilization is beginning to disintegrate. Now, it doesn't disintegrate in a day, but there are certain tenets that made it strong that have been eroded, or things that were hidden, kept in the backwaters, which are now coming to the fore. You cannot build a civilization on the levels of inequalities that were witnessed in the process of making and creating the American empire, and suppose that at some back there will not be a counter reaction to it. There will be.
There's been a certain stripping down of certain, kinds of protections that I think Americans are believed to have had for a long time. And then there's the hope that with this new administration, that there will then be the building of it. And I saw something yesterday that likened this to the years after the Great Depression of 1930. And so then giving 1929, 1930, so giving Biden now that huge responsibility of building up not just the economy, but also building up the fabric around the character of the U.S. administration and government, not just internally, but, around the globe. So it would seem like he has a Herculean task, on his shoulders right now to say, okay, here we go. It's not just sitting pretty on the White House lawns. It's, sleeves rolled up. We have a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of responsibility that's been placed on him. And there's even higher expectation then of, what he will be able to build up. And guess what? Not just from people in his support, but also people who jumped ship, who said, okay, we thought Trump was the answer, but we realized he wasn't. So come on now, you who've been put in that position,
okay,
give
now
us results.
Do the job.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room. As we conclude today, let's hear today's proverb.
From Team Mafisi.
She's not going to let that one go.
She's not going to let this one go. Men would not tell lies if women asked fewer. You're talking of perceptions. Even as I talk about this particular proverb, consider the perception of the narrative that we've had about youth power in this country. They actually forget that we have a youthful presidency.
Where? In which country?
Both our president and deputy fall in the category of youth. Yes.
As per the UN.
They are youthful.
Yeah, you become an adult at 75.
They are youthful. Even forget the UN. Even if you look at the age at which they got into power, they were youthful. So you are asking people to hope for something that we already have. And instead of auditing and finding how this youthful presidency has actually served you, you're still looking for another one when you actually have one.
Don't ask questions, Abi. Just, it's there.
Yeah,
So-
go back to history. We had youthful presidents when we had the Kwame Nkrumah.
So no seeing how that
backing
relates
that.
to the proverb.
It doesn't.
Oh, actually,
Nothing can be done with that proverb. Let it rest.
Actually, it does.
Eh.
You see, if you ask fewer questions about the way in which you are led, then you will not need to actually
Tell
have-
lies.
Yes, or the misery.
Withstand the lies.
Why do you ask politicians all these questions when you know very well?
And
they're
you
not
want them
going
to tell you a lie and you know the truth.
Ask less questions,
Oh,
and
my
they will actually
goodness.
tell you
That's
infinitely.
You are doing well until that very last point. Tomorrow
See,
get a
that's
better
rich.
proverb. You've sold-
Okay, thank you very
sold
much for
yourself.
joining us today. Wanjiro, thank you very much for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Yeah, or we'll host you again soon.
A pleasure.
Hopefully, very soon.
Yeah, and I'll
Okay.
try and wake up on time.
Yes.
Well, I was actually up on time. I'll try and leave the house on time.
So try and be here on time. It's 10